So you are kidding, right?
Harvesting organs? Yes. Cloning murder? No.
Yikes, that's some pretty heavy stuff to start off with. Welcome to our this episode of Cheap Seat Critics podcasts. Um, I don't have the number of the episode, but it's up there. It's I think 30 something. Uh, Today we're
Yeah.
covering Living with Yourself, a Netflix series show, one season starring Paul Rudd. And today on the docket we have.
I am a geeky writer for as
I'm
long as
Chris,
I'll be here. Sorry.
and I'll cut off my co-host, and I'm Chris Maroon.
And I'm Sprinks. But yeah,
Yeah,
the
and as always, feel free to follow us on our socials: Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, Letterbox. We really appreciate feedback, comments, etc. Or any. Feel free to comment and tell me how my opinion's stupid or me dying of sickness is funny. Whatever. I don't care. But yeah, please follow
Community
us and
engagement.
yeah, please follow
yeah,
us and we'll definitely engage. So
build up the community. Any questions, comments, concerns? We look for them, and then recaps is when we go over and discuss them if there are any. So thank you for those. So yeah, I got a couple facts about this show. I guess we should start with history, though. Is there any history the two of you have with this?
look, I really like Ant Man and no wait, wrong script. Let me see. Uh, no history with this. Sorry.
Um, I heard about it when it was coming out. I never even watched the trailer. That is about it.
Okay, and then I've seen it all the way through once, I think when it came out in 2019, and haven't seen it again till now. But yeah, I got some facts here. Not a lot. Not much I can find on this show. Maybe because of its popularity. Who knows? And as always, the facts I share take with a grain of salt. Who knows how much is true and how much is false? So, the show's initial release date on Netflix is October 18th, 2019. Episode count of 8 episodes, ranging between 21 to 35 minutes in length. It is directed by Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Ferris, who are known for directing music videos for Red Hot Chili Peppers. The genre is a comedy drama, and that's pretty much the normal facts I have on it. And I only have two, I guess, fun facts of sorts. The show got nominated for two awards, one being the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in the category of television series, musical, or comedy, and the second is the Critics' Choice Television Award for Best Actor in a Comedy Series. And then
Seeing
this,
both of those for Paul Rudd.
oh yeah, that's my best guess.
That was
And
clearly for Dan.
yeah,
No, I
and
thought it was for Tom
this,
Brady. I was
oh, second fact I have is Paul Rudd only signed on for one season, leaving the show on hiatus. So it wasn't canceled, but it's just sitting somewhere. I couldn't find anything if a script for season two is done. I couldn't tell who's still on board for the project. I don't know. I just know it's out there.
here's a
Well, it's
potentially interesting
been a
question.
while since the
Yeah,
first one came out.
yeah. Here's a potential interesting question. Would we even want a season two? Or like, do you think
I
this
don't think this
story
needs
need?
one.
Yeah, I don't think it needs a season two, surprisingly. But I'm curious: do you guys, if you had the option, would you want one?
I don't think it needs one. I wouldn't mind a season two because I'm curious what conflict they would add to the change, other than a baby situation. But
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd probably be a time jump of when they actually have a baby.
yeah,
Because
Yeah.
right now they could easily just pass off their twin brothers because they kind of did that already.
Hmm.
There's not much conflict left because now they kind of resolved it by the end of it.
Hmm.
so the structure we'll be going with today is we're going episode by episode. Sorry for those really jonesing for us to start on episode 7 for some reason. But we'll do episode by episode, and in said episode, we can popcorn around to whatever just wants to be brought up.
That's fair. Uh,
So let us.
yeah.
Oh,
No, no. Sorry. I just Go ahead.
Okay, all good. So let's start with episode one, and I know the two of you prefer linear structure, so let's just start with that opening hook before the title of Paul Rudd bursting out of a plastic covering in the ground.
For a
Uh,
hook, I did a good job. I was definitely hooked for the show at that point, and to see him kind of look around at the wait, does he? Do we see the? Is this? Do we get a panning shot of looking at the other graves as he jumps out of it yet, or is that later on?
they're in the
It's
background, but they're not at focus yet.
yeah.
That's the other
Okay,
time.
This
no, but yeah,
beginning
it
in
was a
this
good hook.
episode doesn't show. I don't think it doesn't point out other graves in like the different color of soil.
Yeah, you can just
Hmm.
see like one in the background if you're looking closely, I think.
Okay, interesting. All right, but yeah. Anyways, good hook. I was definitely pulled in. It does its job as a starter to a scene.
Yeah, and it's definitely not out of place considering how much jumping around there is in this. Not even just between characters, but around time as well.
We Quentin Tarantino shit a lot.
Yes,
In a good way.
but yeah, it was a good hook. And then we get the 24 hours earlier bit. Um, and I forgot what I was going to go with that. Darn. Someone else popcorn.
All
Detail.
right.
Just a small one. A detail I like during the presentation where he asked for a couple more days at work, and Dan went up with the VR devices. I think it's interesting that Miles, I guess, just to show a little more of his character at the beginning here, he chose not to choose a VR machine. It wasn't that they ran out; he was the one giving them out, so he had every opportunity to take one or set one aside for himself.
You think that was
Yeah, just
stubbornness,
builds
or do you
up
think
his
he?
depression or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I accumulated. I ascribed that to his depression or stubbornness.
Because he's pretty much just through with his life at this point. He doesn't care anymore.
Um, I kind of like the one thing as we get along here, this will become more prevalent, but I'll bring it up now. One thing I do like about the show is that it's circumvented a lot of what is it called? Cliches. Like fighting for the sake of like drama, pretty much. It made things I think work out better for the show towards the end. Um, while also it feels like the tension that's slowly like being built between our two main protagonists being more realistic because they are the same person, so naturally they wouldn't immediately go to like hating each other. Um,
Uh, yeah, I agree because usually the two things I critique is romantic relationships, which I'm sure writers sick of me about already. Um,
oh, I'm
and
not sick
then
of you. I appreciate you.
I bring up manufactured drama, and the show I agree managed to avoid manufactured drama. All the drama seems natural and justified in its presence,
I also
whether it
agree with that.
be his relationship with his wife or the problems at work. It all seemed to
Or
make
just
sense.
yeah,
I
I
like
agree.
how, as Ryder says, it's not cliche. They're not immediately against one another or evil. It's they are the same. They're both Miles, but their understanding and attempt to respect to to solve it.
Mhm.
I like that. It's not immediately like, oh, the clone's going to be the backstabber, or Miles is going to realize, oh, one of us is has to die because that's what it was destined to be, and it was faulty equipment that it didn't, and so forth. Um, Also, this is just me going forward. It might help. Uh, I in my own notes, I have written Miles as normal first Miles we're introduced to, and then I have clone.
I just
Okay.
call OG and clone.
OG and
Uh,
clone.
yeah, in my notes I wrote Miles and Mile. So,
Okay.
uh, I guess we should all decide on what we should, as a collective, say it for
I
audience
think we
should,
should
choice.
just
I think
call
we
him a
should just go.
clone.
I think we should just go Miles and then clone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to have a baseline here, so we don't screw it up.
Yeah. Don't want to confuse anyone on which person we're talking about.
Yeah. Another quick note I noticed very early on here. I think because I noted it down in the first episode. The music is almost whimsical. But it's got like cyberpunkish undertones, and then that music is usually broken up by organic sounds. So it's one of the things that the tight sound editing really caught me, and the uniqueness of like the composition as well. So props to that because it kind of encapsulates the rest of the show.
Yeah. In my
Uh,
notes, I have the music listed as dreamy sci-fi. It's very it's very different and interesting music that I don't think I've really heard anywhere else.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think the first episode had Enya, which is a good just pick to
yes, a
stick with.
couple times, and that was the only song in this that I felt didn't really fit. I didn't know why they chose that. The Sail Away.
Yeah.
Sail away, sail away. I didn't, unless you could take it like he's sailing away from his life to start something new, but I don't think that's the case for something they're going for.
hmm
But
I
I don't know. What do you guys think of that music choice?
I thought
With
it fit.
Enya specifically.
That specifically because it's not continued. I think I value it more. I would have probably been annoyed if they continued to bring in pop music throughout the show. But because it's contained, it's like a part of the everyday life almost, you know, or the change, I suppose.
Right.
Um, and yeah, to kind of piggyback off what you said, Sprinks, about with the you never heard the music before. Like I said, I do think there's some cyberpunk undertones, but it's very very like the inspiration is there, which takes me to like the concept of dystopia, and since this has a bit of sci-fi edge to it, and its story, I think is a nice touch that it's not fully committed to that genre, but it's very very like a whimsical turn of it, and I think that helps the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I could think to compare, because I also wrote just weird music, um, was the show Resident Alien. I only seen a couple episodes, so I could be misremembering, but
Is
I
that with
kind of
Alan
got those
Tudyk?
vibes. I barely remember the show. I'm just thinking of
Okay.
the music from it. Sinister showed me a couple episodes, couple years ago.
Okay. How do you guys?
Uh,
Oh, sorry.
I was going on popcorn, but go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, how do you two feel about the fact that Miles's spa treatment had faulty equipment?
Uh,
Lucky,
used to progress the plot,
yeah,
to give us the plot actually.
yeah,
Um, just because we're following our main character, I guess things always have to happen to the main character for the plot to happen. So what I will say is convenient to a degree, which is kind of dumb, is his bag that he came out of from the dirt had a hole in it, so he didn't suffocate. Don't know if you guys noticed that when he came out.
I
Well,
did.
I noticed kind of two things. The first, the hook shot. When you say the hole in it, are you describing the hook at the very beginning, or are you describing the second time it's shown?
Both. There's
Oh,
a hole in it.
I didn't catch it the second time. The first time I noticed, right, like next to his like cheek by his nose, there was a hole.
Yeah.
Second time I didn't catch that, but what I did catch is both shots of the first one and then the second time it's shown are different shots because his movements are different in each.
Yeah, they do that with a lot of the like different angle stuff from a different POV in this. When they're dancing in the house on the last episode, seeing clones POV, they're a little different because they had to reshoot it again.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm. Um, because they're using the same actor. But I guess to kind of go off your thing, Sprinks, the faulty equipment, it actually made me develop a more. It actually in my head, I had a prediction for what I thought was going to be a very, very important like C plot or B plot that would come into relevance later. And while it came into relevance, it was like worthless and meaningless. Um,
Yeah.
I actually thought that was going to lead to that they were being in an experiment, they were an intentional accident to see what would happen, almost. And the reason I developed that idea is because there's that car that follows them, the kind of Volkswagen low tech car that follows them in the round in the background.
Hmm.
Um, which we know we find out is from the underfunded FDA. But I thought that uh, it was going to be a much bigger twist than it turned out to be. Um, So I have since then just labeled that moment of their equipment failing just as Crimson said, it's just there to progress the plot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Uh,
I'm glad that for me, I'm glad that it happened in the first episode and it wasn't something like later down the line explained. That I like. That it was shown in
The
the first
car
episode.
or
No, the faulty
something else?
equipment.
Oh, okay.
That it was shown in the first episode. That's pretty much the reason why this has occurred, rather than say like episode 5, it's touched on.
yeah, they get it out of the way pretty quickly, and the information, the more information we get on it in the is it yeah, the second episode because that's the second half of the second
Yeah.
episode, I think.
Oh, I don't know if
Um,
I should. I have them written down, but the episode names. So episode 1 is the best you can be. Just figured I'll put that in there.
fair enough. Uh, I as a someone who kind of watches football, I have to note that the Tom Brady joke is a little dated now. He has 7 rings. Um,
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
that was the 6 joke?
yep,
Ah,
yeah. He got and refreshed himself, and that's how he got his Super Bowl wins. The 6 rings, uh, which is funny. I That is one of the jokes that got me laughing because when you're a fan of football, you're either one of two people. You either hate Tom Brady because he's so good, or you like Tom Brady because he's so good. So I thought that was funny. Um,
Well, we got a Sweet Life on Deck episode for you.
wow, well, that's
Uh,
a reference. Jeez Louise.
yeah. It was
Um,
Tom Brady in that episode, right?
maybe.
I think
It's an interesting cameo to have Tom Brady in the show.
I'm
it
happy
brought
he
up.
didn't overstay his welcome. Like he didn't. He's not a good actor. No offense, Tom. But it was enough to quickly sell the point of the spa. I'm like, when that holy fuck, this is real because I think we're all kind of in Miles' shoes when he shows up and it looks like a nothing place. And then, Tom Brady walks out of all people.
Yeah. Well, Miles was in that moment. He was like, "What am I doing here?" And he was gonna leave if it wasn't for
Yep.
Tom Brady coming out. But even still, Miles going inside, it's I have in my notes. That's not sketchy or looks weird at all. Totally fine. No red flags. It's such a
Yeah.
weird building to be marketed for a spa. But then again, it is listed of like you have to be recommended by someone who's already been kind of thing. So it's not
It's
necessarily
also
just open to the
illegal.
public.
Yeah. Um, I will say though, the workers, they fucking are terrifying. They teleported into those seats in the first scene. It
Oh, in the
really,
pitch black room, yeah.
yeah, it really like when he first arrive into the pink room or whatever, and he looks around, it's empty, and then they just appear. It's definitely good for funsies, but I did note that it's obviously probably this is a nitpick, so it's not a problem. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Before we get too far from the Tom Brady thing, do you think they were cloning clones?
because he said it was his 6th time.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's what I think they were doing, at least for in Tom Brady's case.
Okay. Because you'd think there would be complications by cloning clones. Usually that's a problem with cloning stories is that the DNA degrades the more you clone,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I'm gonna reference our Avatar episode that's come out by now, right? I think. Um,
Yes.
so uh, I think it was Sinister who brought up that like you can't perfectly replicate like someone's memories or DNA or things like that. And like the idea that technology will always degrade. Um, that's not necessarily true. I mean, so I don't really have an issue with that. It's one of those things that it skirts around, for sure. I mean, there's no obvious signs of the degradation, uh, or at least in the brief incident we have Tom Brady that there's um, oh, what is it called? Uh,
Um, at least at the time, I didn't know if it was like kind of a joke at Tom Brady if he's like gets dumber or something. You would know more than I. Does he get dumber through
in
through
real life,
time? Yeah.
no.
No?
He's like I said, he got his seventh ring, and I mean, I have personal reasons. Like, I don't like him as a human being. He's kind of not a good person, but I do recognize he's a great football player and athlete, and that's just remained consistent, at least in my head. So, from what I understand him to be,
Yeah.
I didn't see it as cloning clones. I saw his um I guess also used as a joke at the time for the sixth trip as him saying this is his sixth time here is like a tune-up. That that was
Well, the
my
clones
thought.
aren't aware they're clones, so that wouldn't make sense.
they could
The
be
original
cloning
guy gets
clones.
killed, so
Yeah, it could be that uh, it could be a tune-up, like you say, Springs, but I don't think there's enough evidence for that. I mean,
No,
like it's very very open-ended with whether they're cloning clones or not, because we only know that there's one Tom Brady body.
I agree.
What?
I also go with it's very open-ended because I think something that would cement it a little more is if Tom Brady paid another 50 grand each time, then I would think it would be more cloning clones because they
Mhm.
could just sedate him, put him under, do absolutely nothing, and send him on his way to the clone for the past 5 times.
Maybe.
My
I don't
thought
know
is
if
if
that
they're
makes
not being
sense.
funded to make the clone, the um the payment of 50 grand in what I'm thinking is to have the equipment to make a clone and to actually profit off of it. So unless Tom Brady's actually paying that every time for them to make a new clone, I think they
Tom
just
Brady doesn't know that they're making clones. No one knows they're making clones.
I know he doesn't know they're making clones. I'm just saying if he comes in without the money, I don't think they would make another clone. They're not being paid to make another clone of him.
Agreed. But obviously, when you go to a spa, you pay for the spa, so he's paying 50,000 each time he goes for a spa visit.
To me, that wasn't cemented or shown. It was
You
played
think he's
off as
just
a
there
joke,
for
but
free?
I think he went in there for a spa. Yeah, as a spa. I don't know. As I said, it's not shown of like any other clone coming in or, Miles coming back in or the clone coming back in of Miles and, saying, can you fix me? Like if the clone came in and said, you made Miles happier, can you make me happier at some point? It was never shown if they could do that again or if there would be a price for it. So the Tom Brady thing to me was just, of course, played off as a joke, but in the practicality of the setting of him saying six, I think it was more of a tune-up. That's what I lean more
Well,
towards.
the part I'm confused with your theory is that relies on them knowing they're clones, which we know they don't know that.
Then why would the Tom Brady clone keep going back?
Well, maybe his life gets worse and he just wants to feel better again. Because your life doesn't just stay happy. Look at Clone. He wants to
Okay,
kill himself by the end of this.
so if he goes back and they ate him, but they don't make another clone and just say, "All right, you're good," and send him on his way, like they did with the Miles clone, what would be the problem with that? Why would he have to know in what relaying to you that he needs to know clones are a thing.
You're saying
It-
that he goes back for a tune-up.
He's going back to the spa for a reason. To feel better
Yeah,
is
and
my best
I
guess.
I think yeah, precisely. That's the whole point of the spa is to feel better. Because I would imagine as a celebrity, your life isn't the easiest thing on the planet, especially like what writer said, Brady is pretty polarizing, gets a lot of hate.
yeah, but you know
Um,
what? He's a good
so he
football
just
player
go,
still. So
yeah, he'd go back to de-stress the people there, kill them, give the new clone the happy clone, so on and so forth. That seems like the business model of the place is just
okay, actually,
cloning.
here this will clarify, I think, something for me. Springs, in your head, when you just say tune up, do you mean like they go in and like actually recorrect his DNA?
No, I'm thinking he goes in, gets on the table, gets knocked out. They do absolutely nothing. He wakes up and they're like, "All right, you're all good," and they send him on his way. So they didn't fix anything, which is later down the line why he would return for a third and fourth time because they didn't change him. So they might just be milking money out of him, but not creating more and more clones of work on their end.
Actually, you
I
know
think
what?
that's a lot of assuming.
Actually, you know what? I think I got my sort of way to counter this. If they weren't killing clones, Tom Brady's corpse wouldn't be recognizable in the end. It would have degraded too much in the course of like however many times he come back because it he won his first Super Bowl. Oh God, in the 2000s. That's a lot of years to have passed from when this takes place.
Well, that's connecting of his 6 times is to the 6 Super Bowls.
Well, it's a very clear reference. That's what they writers intentionally mean. So yes, that is a reference to the 6 Super Bowls. He went back to win his 6 Super Bowls. What I'm telling you is they have to be killing clones because the corpse is recognizable to Dan in the latest episode. His corpse could not have degraded that quickly, or it would have been unrecognizable by that point if they weren't killing clones.
Unrecognizable to Dan. How? Mm,
Well,
Corpse with new
Dan
bones.
Dan recommended it to Miles in
no,
episode
no, 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 no,
one.
no. I'm talking about the last episode when they're. I'm bringing in the last episode. So sorry, Onions, but I'm talking about the last episode or the second to last episode when he goes there with clone Miles
Yeah, and
and
digs
he's
up
to
his
try and find
body.
his corpse. There is a moment where he spits up. He's like, "Is that Tom Brady?" He would not. The corpse
Oh,
would be unrecognizable. Is what I'm saying.
at that point in time.
Yeah.
Okay, that
If it yeah.
that no, that does help structure then that this 6 time for Tom Brady would be a point of a clone of a clone. Okay. Nope, that makes sense to me. Or
All right.
helps
Uh
justify the sense of cloning clones.
yeah. I mean like they might necessarily they could be like no, never mind. I was about to propose another theory which was like they saved the
But
original DNA, but
yeah,
they
yeah,
can't even do that because Tom Brady is still aging. So um
that's a good point. Yeah, that
um
is a good point.
let's see.
I guess I'll throw something out unless someone's got something.
No, go ahead.
All right. So to me, we didn't have we didn't know much about Miles, but having seen Miles throughout the entire show by the end, I don't know if he would have just given $50,000 to a spa, especially if it was his wife's money, even though he didn't view it that way at a whim later.
Yeah, it is a bit of a whim. It is a
With
whim. And
with the start of Miles, yeah, I'd agree. That's a lot of money just out of the blue. Well, not out of the blue, but just to throw at a spa. And Dan didn't necessarily sell it all
Yeah,
too much of,
yeah,
showing it because no one knew of clones at the time, not even Dan. But I think later down the line of showing the history of original Miles up to the point of going to the spa, I think it helps strengthen the reason why he did. Because in episode one,
yeah,
just doing it, I think it's pretty wild. But then
yeah,
it shows more reasoning towards it.
yeah. I'm kind of on the fence about this one. I'm not sure if I think I think Miles, like, if the first episode, I'm happy we get a lot more context to the first episode and that he chooses to go to the spa because we get a lot more like context, which I think helps add more to his character. But I think it adds more layers in that, like, I don't. I'm kind of. He probably wouldn't throw all that money on a whim. Whereas with the first episode, it makes sense within context why he would throw it on a whim, if that makes sense.
I think my biggest issue is just the amount thrown at it. Because I mean, even a depressed person wanting to be happy, that's like all their money. Her card
Case in
got
point.
declined. Um, I I think it was too much just on a whim. Because, well, like, I agree with you, Sprinks. Dan didn't say anything. He's like, "I'm a changed man after that spa. What can I say? $50,000."
And
Dan didn't say that, but
all
that's
that's
what it
shown
ends
to
up being.
us that is shown to Miles is the one presentation Dan gave.
And that's all we have to go off of.
Yeah.
So we have that and the phone call, and the phone call didn't say anything except location and money. So I I don't know. I think it's too much for uh, someone of um, his stature. That's not the right word. The amount of money they have, that's pretty much all they got, and it was his wife's business money, from what it sounded like. So
Oh yeah, it greatly sounded like, over 50% was from her.
yeah,
Yeah, especially since his job isn't going well, which he states several times throughout the show.
Yeah.
Do I have anything else about the first
I have
episode?
one more thing to touch on the first episode. Well, I guess, Ryder, you can look for something. I like the detail in, I guess this is for the makeup department, but I like the difference. You can visually see a difference. They're identical. I mean, they're both Paul Rudd, the clone, and Miles. But I like
Yeah,
the difference in the hair that stands out between the two, as well as I think makeup on Miles to make him look more tired and strained.
he's
oh,
got more of a gray tone to
even their
him.
posture is different
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
they do. It's definitely, it reminds me of uh I want to reference Christopher Reeve's Superman. Christopher Reeves had a really good Clark Kent to Superman transition. Um, like there's a difference in stature, there's a difference in charisma, and I think the act. While it was less on the what is it called? That was less on the
Effects
makeup
team, makeup
department.
department.
It was more definitely on the acting. I think Paul Rudd's acting doing the same thing really adds more to the makeup department's work and costuming work and all of that.
I can agree that Paul Rudd's acting in this is phenomenal. It really does look like he's playing two different characters.
Um, let's see. Uh, I really love
give me one.
that. What?
Seems Crimson's a bit occupied at the moment for a sec.
Oh,
So
okay.
go ahead,
Well,
Ryder.
in that case, I'll go on. I really like the when the kind of like it's not real. It's in a similar vein to a thoughtful echo, but the way he keeps running into the
Credenza.
furniture at the bottom of the stairs, the credenza. Um, and that helps at the end as well. He runs into it one more time before the clone and Miles get into a fight.
Yeah.
And I also love when they first see each other, they're both in shock. And they both kind of like intelligently, quietly back themselves into the garage because they both don't know what the fuck is going on. And I like that it's again, it's not immediate jump to violence. It's not a immediate jump to like. It's one of those things that we circumvented like uh, a lot of like forced drama, and this really helps, and this really plays into the following scene, which is when they're in the car and they're quizzing each other.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of those things where like the drama is very reasonably written to where like both Miles and the clone like kind of almost reaches somewhat understanding in the car despite the shock of it all.
Yeah. Something
And
I like about the car scene is the question I think the clone poses to Miles poses a question that the clone gets pretty fast about the bee sting on the eye. And then the other way around, when Miles is asked a question, he stammers, trying to figure out the name, asking for hints. And when he asks the clone doesn't know, and the clone, you know, freezes a bit and tries to figure out as well, and they work it out together. I like that it shows that the clone isn't perfect. It's not,
Yes.
no, it's not. It's a better version, but I think that's just simply an attitude.
It also really adds to the whole, like, it's Miles' memories that are in there. So the fact that Miles has trouble remembering, of course, Clone would have trouble remembering.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
like that it shows right off the bat flaws to the clone of making it definitely more human than whatever perfect person it was advertised to be from the spa in a way, or from Dan.
I hear the tail end of this when I got back. That was something I had with Clone is that I didn't understand why he was so drastically different. Because there's the stuff where like he's got a new body, so he feels good. He probably doesn't have the aches that however old Paul Rudd
There
is, 40 something. He doesn't have the body aches, but he still has his memories. So he'd still have the oh I hate my job. He'd still have those in him. So his little
so
happy pappy everything kind of seemed
they
off.
from what I understood is, like, I think there's a throwaway line for it, and Springs, you can correct me if I'm wrong because you've seen the show twice. There was throwaway lines like they corrected the dopamine into going to his brain, so he's got the right amount of dopamine going in. They fixed like other minor like DNA things at the DNA level as well. So like he doesn't have depression. So he may have the memories, but he doesn't have the depression, or like the dope, or the chemical imbalance in the brain, or other things that would normally hold him back.
But
I
my
believe
thing is,
that's true.
you are, what your experiences are. You get the depression because of your life. So him having those memories still would still give him the depression. Uh,
I think
my point.
something that slightly helps with this is in the car scene when the clone answers being stung by a bee. He's very stoic, very straight faced. He's not, reminiscing about the pain or how bad it was and adding a bunch of adjectives to, you know, e- um, emphasize how painful it was when he was younger. It seems that the memories are there, but the emotional responses from said memories aren't as strong, or maybe not even there, that Miles has from the memories.
Uh, all right,
Yeah, that's what my problem is.
I
Because
got some
the
more.
memories give you the emotional response. That's the whole point of having
Yeah,
memories.
but there's also the sensory aspect to it as well, since he never directly experienced those memories. So, like,
But his brain
okay,
records his body's reactions to those things as well.
okay. So I'm gonna use an example here because I'm. Uh, so there are children that are there are humans that are born in the world that can't see, and or can't see. So at a young age, they are very very talkative and they yell because they learn to echolocate. Um, And the point I'm bringing this up is that, like, when you are in a new body or you're very very young, you're very very malleable in that sense. It's why he has sensory overload and wants to like stick his head out of the car because he's really really enjoying all the sensory stuff. He doesn't have direct access, as far as I can tell, to the sensory experience that those times gave him. So like they clean the slate almost. At least that's the interpretation I get what the writers intend for us. Um and that's why he's uh another reason as to why he's in a better mood is because everything he's experiencing now is its first body sensory experience, so it will always be like a euphoric sensory overload kind of stimulation. um
I mean, I agree with that. I have that sentiment as well. New body, new everything. But your mind would still know these things anyways. So it would be more of a heightened thing instead of a new thing. But he would
uh
still have the initial feeling. Like we see him smell his wife's hair and pillow and stuff. Makes sense. He's got a new nose. It's probably stronger than he remembers it because his nose is old
mhm.
with normal miles. But he would still know what she smells like. so the memories aren't gone, the feelings aren't gone, they're just heightened. So I feel it's
Mm.
overly happy because everything else would still be present. That's my point.
Okay. I'm trying. Okay, I know which point you're making. I'm just trying to draw it up in my head right now.
The
So,
best I can think of is it. I don't know if it necessarily heightens, but I think it certainly reduces negative emotions and feelings in the clone because when the clone during the party, Kate's party, Miles' wife, he talks about the bear story and is laughing and smiling. So he has the emotion of that memory of joy or retelling it because it's it might actually help in that regard. He's not. I think if OG Miles was talking about that story, he'd have a little more quiver, a little more fear because it was about a bear and how scared he was in the moment. But the clone discussing the story is more jokey, more it was all good, it was fine. And later, when Kate tells the clone this isn't going to work, he expresses a fit of rage and anger that he doesn't hold and it is new to him. That's why he comes back and apologizes for it and didn't know what really happened because to him he isn't he's not it's not that he's not capable of it. He limits that of himself or never uses it and I think that's just in the chemical makeup of the clone to not express negatively towards things.
yeah. I mean, a
That's
lot of
where
the
we're different because I connect emotions to memories. You can't have an emotion towards something if you don't remember it.
well, you
Well,
also have memories as you. Well, you also get emotions as you draw upon new experiences. So I understand what you mean there, and I'm like I said, I'm not. I will acknowledge this is a problem. I don't think it's a major one, but it is a problem because this is something the writers could have fixed with their when the clone and Miles come back to question them. So this is something that could have been stated over in dialogue and smoothed over. The fact that they didn't do that is a problem. So because as we've noticed, we all have kind of different interpretations. So I'm happy to chalk it as a problem that the writers didn't fix it. Um,
'Cause to me, the
I
way you guys are describing it, it feels like memory tampering to me, which they didn't talk about doing. Um,
um
that's what it's all screaming to me is he now feels happy about telling the story instead of fearful, but he still should feel fearful because he still has those thoughts. So you saying
well
he's happy about telling the story now makes me feel like they changed that memory to make him feel not scared about it anymore,
well we all
and
know how
that's a big thing they didn't cover.
we all know how I feel about anecdotal stories being used, but I will use an anecdotal one, uh, not necessarily as a counterpoint, but just because I think it will bring an interesting topic of discussion. I'm very, very terrified of heights, and I'm claustrophobic. I'm less so terrified of heights now, but when I was younger, very much so. Um, as a result of being claustrophobic, whenever I went to water parks, I couldn't like ride the closed slides.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, I will say that when I was promised that I would buy my uncle would buy me a toy if I went on a big water slide, and there was only one slide that was uncovered. It wasn't. It was the tallest one, and obviously I didn't care about the height then because I was at the bottom. Um, but ultimately I went through with the experience and stuff like that. And I'm doing this to make the point necessarily that like you don't necessarily like I do remember myself having being afraid, but that's not my what I walked away from the experience like afterwards, if that makes sense. So your feelings towards specific memories can change. So
The problem
that's
is it's changing within a day or two span. I mean, technically it's hours because he's happy right out the gate. But with our examples of him doing storytelling and stuff, that's he
we
should
don't
still be Miles
Yeah, we don't have any examples in the show of like original Miles telling a true story because we got one of him telling a fake story, but I would have preferred at least at some point in the show we saw him tell a real story because I agree with what you're saying now, or at least a little more, in that like the only evidence that we have that Miles is good at storytelling is that his wife comments saying, "I miss your stories," or "miss the way you tell stories." Um, so this is clearly a character trait. So maybe it might have been once upon a time, like he might not be fearful of that particular story anymore. He just hasn't told it in a while. But I don't really have any evidence to say otherwise. So
Okay.
Uh,
I think
I guess. Sorry.
I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say this is a big thing. I think not everything that the clone shares has to be compared and symmetrically shown through Miles. Otherwise, I think it would just be a little too dragged on and boring if the clone is continually compared to what Miles has done. It happens quite a bit in the show that there are, flashbacks and scenes of something regular, normal Miles has done that the clone kind of goes about it its own way in that regard of comparison. But I like the parts where it's kind of open ended and doesn't show what the past holds of how the clone goes about something. And to me that kind of shows in of itself, if the clone is doing it this way, how was it must have been a worse way of how Miles handles the situation, or vice versa, how Miles handles something and how the clone doesn't. And if the clone was to, how would that go? And I think that it's not necessarily a mystery, but that small idea of how each one would tackle the comparison on the other end, um, of what the other one has done would be is a nice balance to not have it all the time.
I agree. The problem is this is something the writers could have fixed in the explanation scene when the clone and OG Miles met up at the with the workers, like to because they didn't know what the fuck was going on.
I also agree. It could have potentially been boring, and could have been fixed with a line, like writer said. But the way we got it presented, I feel doesn't make sense with what we were given.
So we chalk it up as a problem. It doesn't necessarily break the story, I guess, but it is still a problem.
Gotcha. Well, with about, I think, 40 minutes now on episode one, is there anything else the two of you would like to popcorn at, or should we continue to episode two?
Important things. We met the farmer in this episode, right? When Miles woke up, because
Right.
he's going to be
Yeah.
a repeat character. I think it's a nice detail that we're introduced to him in this way, and then it's recontextualized later.
Agreed.
Um, I like that the people in the spa just are truthful with them. Like they tell them which is the real one and which one's the clone, even though we as an audience can tell. But I'm happy that they're like there's that drama is not we avoided cliche drama here. Like we don't go through the mystery mishap of who's who.
Yes.
It's very clearly defined.
And it definitely shows that this is the spa's first interaction of a screw up.
Yes.
So
There's
Uh,
one little, I guess, detail. I would imagine it was intentional. Later, when we see Kate go through the what's the desk again?
credenza.
It starts with C. Credenza. For her cigarettes, you can see a light bulb in there. So we now know they store light bulbs in the credenza because he needs to screw in a light bulb in the beginning of this, and he didn't know where it was.
I'll be right back. Give me a second.
Roger.
All right.
But I think that was my last point on episode one.
Episode one. All right. We then can go on to episode two, titled "Made in a Strip Mall."
Uh, yes, which is trying to, that might be my favorite line in this for comedy's sake, anyways, because this was it's described as comedy drama, and I brought up before we started that this did not feel like a comedy. I don't think there was enough comedy in it to be classified as a comedy.
I feel the
What do you
same.
think?
No, I
Okay.
feel the same. I think definitely far more drama was over it, and I think it could also be classified more of sci-fi.
I I guess technically, because it's future science, it doesn't really feel like sci-fi, but by definition, I agree. Uh, and I haven't seen too many Paul Rudd things, but I think this is probably the most serious role I've seen him in. 'Cause I've seen him as Ant Man, and then feel like I've seen him as a father in something else, but I can't put my
Yeah, he
finger on
plays
it.
the stepdad in Night at the Museum.
Yeah, there we go. That's it. Very small role in that, but I haven't seen too many Paul Rudd things. This was a serious take. He he's usually a comedy guy, from my understanding, so it was interesting to see him not have much comedy in this.
Yeah, I've seen him in. I think it's I Love You Man, and he was in Role Models. I believe that's him. Both definitely more comedic pieces, but I have seen him in some serious, like The Fundamentals of Caregiving, and I think that's a good serious take on him, or a good serious acting from Paul Rudd as well. And I know Ryder's not here, but I only saw it once. I think he's also in 200 Cigarettes, maybe. But yeah, I think he's
No
most
idea.
known nowadays for Ant Man.
Definitely. I mean, once you go Marvel, you become known. Even, I
Something
mean, he was known before that, but still.
I like that they do continually as the episodes go on is the title starts getting glitchier.
I noticed that by episode 6 that it was.
Wow.
I was like, "Am I remembering this incorrectly?" Um, because the intro's so short, I barely pay attention to it. But once it started getting all colorfully and glitchy, I'm like, "Oh, this is actually changing."
Yeah. It changes each time. It's slightly different. I guess I can bring it up now. When the clone goes to work and does the presentation and day job that normal Miles would have done, Dan is irritated
Yeah,
and shows negative emotions, and it makes me think, what did regular OG Dan? What was he like? If this is the clone of Dan, and it's supposed to be the better, version of him, what was his normal version like?
I mean, this kind of like my Tom Brady example of maybe Dan's due for another spa treatment if he's this negative.
If life is beating him down this much, he needs to go again.
Yeah, he's like, "All right, the spa made me feel good the first time. I'll go to the spa again." And then new clone.
Yeah, Dan is an interesting character to me in the show, being a clone himself and how he handles things in life. Because the clone of
Yeah.
Miles is what the clone of Dan did to regular Miles
Yes.
in a way, which is also a nice balance. The show has a lot of yin yang balancing in it that I really like, um, in
I only
ways
caught the
that's
end of that, but I agree.
in ways that aren't expressly shown. Welcome back, Ryder. We're talking about Dan as a character being a clone of
Mm.
his original, and how after clone Miles gives a presentation and Dan is irritated and shows negative emotions about it, how did a regular Dan look or go about life kind of thing, if this is supposed to be his better version?
Um,
The only thing I can say is we don't know how old this clone Dan is, do we?
No.
Yeah.
It does, well,
So
it's not
could be
necessarily,
around the block.
yeah. We don't know if it's exactly the last patient the spa had was Dan. That we do not know.
Tom
well, we know
Brady
it's
was.
Tom Brady, but
Well,
I know
I
what
meant
you mean.
new client.
Uh, yeah. It has to be within a time period where he can recognize his own body.
True, because
True.
he did recognize his own body at the end.
So I
Um, and the better
maybe
self of him came up with the VR idea for the pitch, and you're usually given a couple weeks for giving pitches, so probably within a month, I would guess.
Yeah,
I'd
I
say a
think a
couple months.
month at most, but within a month. It would be my guess.
Okay. Right now they're back. Do you have a talking point you'd like to go over in episode 2? Uh,
Episode
Crimson and I
2.
did discuss the title slightly changing.
Yes, that it does get a bit more
Glitchy.
8-bit crazy as we go along. No, not in 8-bit, yeah, glitchy. That's probably a better word. I like the clone's perspective from waking up at the spa and he just goes on to have a nice day. Um, it's very different. Um,
I think it's very clever in a way, and it still works creatively. That the perspective is still of Miles, but the clone version of Miles.
yes, and I also like like there's a lot of hints that were dropped that things were not quite right, even though we as an audience already know the truth because they've met in the previous episode. But when he's walking out, they're telling him they're giving him advice, you know.
Yeah, don't look at after your first bathroom.
Go look out your first bathroom. Eat yogurt because it's probiotic because you have to repopulate the gut. Like that to me was the biggest like red flag that like if someone told that to me after I walked into the spa, but then again, I studied biology, I would have freaked out a little bit.
And
Um,
I definitely would have looked at the toilet, much like Clone did.
You
yeah.
did, and that was some funky looking urine.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Um,
He took it pretty well though. He was a little shocked, but I mean,
it's like
I would
I
have panicked.
see to hydrate.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then going from that to like then the like experience of like the sensory experience of the corn and the farm. Um, I think they're very powerful juxtapositions because going from the opening of the previous episode, which is Miles' depressed life more or less, to this is very uh I think I heard you say this, but you said it's yin and yang effect, but I think you said it more in like regards to Dan. It's one of those things. There's a lot of that in the show everywhere, and it works to its benefit, I think.
I agree. The show has a lot of. It's a very well balanced show of any connection one could think of or see.
I wonder how much screen time Miles and Clone have independently.
That's a good question.
It'd be interesting to see.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
that's
I
not one
would.
of the facts I could find. So
Yeah,
I like
I
that.
did like Ray
Oh,
the farmer
oh yeah,
in his introduction. Well, I guess his introduction was episode 1, but an actual character
The
introduction
actual
here.
character interaction, yeah.
Um, I sell apples, corn, and the thing we sell the most are
soybeans.
soybeans. I like soybeans. Who likes soybeans?
What dumbass black soybeans or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and to be fair, I eat a lot of like soy-made products, but I'm used to being made fun of, so I just laugh along with them. So
Oh, you too?
yeah.
Used to get made fun
Oh, I
of.
still get made fun of. So
I like.
You were gonna say something.
Yeah, I like during the dinner scene that Kate is smart enough to know something's going on.
yep, me
And it's
too.
shown already in episode 2 about it without all the previous discussion of how Kate's feeling about her marriage or partner with Miles and how life is changing and whatnot, not knowing the clone. And this is already like, because I think that's played really well in both instances. It's played well here because we know it's the clone and this is how the clone's going about things, which makes it seem like Kate sees it as a big change and difference. But it's played later on as almost like, does Miles know I have this dating account? And because of that, has he changed who he is to be more a loving and endearing husband? But we don't know that at
It's
this point.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of this show is recontextualized as you go through it, and it's something I appreciate because it's something that all the subtleties are there, but you are rewarded for paying attention later on. You know.
Yes.
Yeah. 'Cause, even when they're both on their phones at the table, we now know she's on the phone looking through the dating app and stuff
That's
as
true.
well.
That's true. Should we? I'll go over something about the diner scene. I think the diner scene, not necessarily the best thing written of these two characters, Clone and Miles, trying to understand where to go next. I think it definitely could have been strengthened in word choice that was used, but something co- not necessarily contradictory of it, but something on the other side of it is I think the acting from Paul Rudd in the scene is phenomenal. It's very well done, showing the tension and confusion of Miles in trying to figure out what to do with the clone, and then with the clone calmly in one instance, and then emotionally a wreck in another, realizing things, and just a far range of emotions not shown from an individual actor. Well, it is shown from Paul Rudd, but not shown from one character expressed through acting. And I think it's a, I guess it's a creative way of showing the range of an actor in a scene in a way that doesn't seem corny.
Um, I'm kind of in agreement. I think I have issues with the scene dialogue wise, but I do think the acting is phenomenal and it really carries the scene. Um, because it could only be strengthened dialogue wise. Because what I remember from it is like they're very very bouncy, and I mean this in like they go from one topic to the next. It doesn't feel quite natural. Um, while while all the dialogue is within reason, that's something that they would talk about eventually. Um, it it feels off, but I do like the like I agree with you that I think their acting from Paul Rudd in this scene really carries it in the differences and then the realization of the clones part and stuff like that. Yeah.
Crimson, I'd
Uh,
like to. Oh, unless you want to
oh,
go first.
ask. I was gonna talk more about the scene, but if you got a question,
I was going to pinpoint what you brought up earlier about the memories and emotional responses to things. How do you think of, or how do you feel about when not Paul, I mean, yeah, Paul Rudd, Miles orders a Coke and a cheeseburger, and the clone orders, I think, a green tea and, healthy options to look more after his health than of Miles if they share the same. Do you think it's because of the attitude that both are going at the situation, and the health is more of a priority to the clone than to Miles at the moment?
well, I don't know why the clone would focus on health more than Miles. So I guess to answer your question, I do find it off because and my point of view here, they should still be pretty much the same person. There hasn't been much change between them other than now clone knows he's the clone. So
Yeah. Like I
him
said,
knowing
this
he's a
is
clone, I don't know why that would affect his drink preference right out the gate. I could see that changing over time as things happen, because we do see they get two different experiences through this movie or show, obviously. But right now, all we get that's technically different between them, of experience wise, is that he now knows he's a clone, and the whole running through the farm and stuff.
I guess I should have asked this earlier to get more of a understanding of Crimson, what you're saying about the clone. What do you think the spa did that is the difference between the clone and Miles?
Um, Essentially, a new body, um, and with a new body comes rejuvenation. Like I said, you wouldn't have the old person aches. You'd have a fresh body, presumably, even though he looks the same age. The body would still probably feel fresh, and just having a fresh body could make you feel happy.
yeah. But we also
Um,
have to factor in the chemical rebalancing line that they have, which again, not major, but something to be noted.
yeah. Yeah. So that's the extent. He should still be the same person, I feel. Maybe heightened emotions a little bit, not to the extreme that's presented to me anyways. S
Okay.
If that answers that question.
Yeah. I was just curious. I don't know how worded you had it beforehand to express it because I didn't fully catch up what you thought the difference between what the spa did. So,
My question for this scene, because I had this in the moment, and I'm kind of on the edge, having seen the whole show now, but at the moment, I found it weird that the guy we get to see of Miles, his personality at this point, I thought he would for sure trade places to go on a trip himself and not send a clone for a trip. I thought for sure Miles was gonna wanna be the fun one, which we
I
get to see later is the case with staying home drinking, writing his story,
yeah, I think
watching
if
adult television.
Miles wasn't so worried or confused or emotionally distressed right now and actually gave it some thought or a day to think over, I think he would take that option. I think right now he's just the clone is unnatural. Get it out of my life. Miles isn't just a murderous killer. It's a situation gone bad, and the responsibility is on his hands to try to figure out. So I think this is just his thought towards it.
What about you,
Oh.
Ryder?
Uh, yes, because I mean, they pay homage to the idea. Like he says, like, man, if I were you, like, I obviously would want to do this, but I can't. I have obligations because he still views his life as his life. Like
Mhm.
he doesn't. He doesn't really understand all his experiences and how the clones' experiences to a degree. Um, so I agree, but I think it is still the shock of the situation that's weighing on him. Um, and kind of a little more on the whole like choice of food thing. It might be kind of like that in a way mentally that sort of when you're on a health kick, you just eat healthier, you work out more, that sort of thing, and that might just be the state that new Miles is now perpetual clone is perpetually going to be in. Because we see he's very fond of jogging later, um, and working out regularly. So it's like he's fixated into a health kick almost, which is why I think he chose to eat healthier. I don't know if that necessarily changes why, or it doesn't give enough. I don't know if that gives enough reason as to why they're eating something different. But that's what it seemed like to me, which is why I don't think it bothered me. Because again, it was recontextualized later with the constantly wanting to work out, and uh, we know that they also enhance the body with the whole. Well, with they joke about the whole masturbating thing, but we know that they have like that their body is enhanced now, so maybe their stamina is increased, among other things. So that might play into the reason of why he's choosing to eat healthier. Like they geared his preferences almost.
Okay, I
I
can see
guess
that.
I'm trying to think of it through a physiological POV because I still think his preferences would be his preferences, but if his body is giving him positive vibes towards feeling healthier he than Miles, then maybe that would push him in that direction.
Here's an interesting question: Is since our taste buds uh more sensory or are they more memory attached? Do you think?
Taste buds?
Well, I don't I don't
I
what do
would
you
say
okay,
sensory.
I don't get the difference here. So what do
Um.
you mean by sensory?
Okay. Fuck. I'm too sick for this. Okay. So sensory is like uh. Here's an easy one. Crimson, you love mac and cheese. So but you would obviously think that obviously different there are different each different mac and cheeses have different sensory experiences just by virtue of like
Yeah.
their taste, their well not necessarily the taste, but their consistency,
If I went to a
how well
restaurant
they're cooked.
opposed to
Yeah,
having a box, yeah.
yeah. And then the so that sensory experience is different from the taste experience. Where like one mac and cheese could be cooked with garlic, one mac and cheese could be cooked with salt or pepper. That
Okay,
that's what I mean.
but I still think it's both because, like with this example, if I have one with garlic, I will remember having that taste. If I had it again, I would know, "Ooh, I didn't like this last time," or "I think I've had this before and I don't think I liked it." You would still know preference based off your sensory intakes. That's like seeing things. You get to
Yeah, but
see something and you remember what you see. You taste something, you remember what you tasted. You smell something, you remember what you smelled.
I
I think
wonder.
the sensory stuff could change when you age. Obviously, your eyes get worse, so that stuff can change. His new body, he could have better eyes. We get to see him put his glasses on in the car and be like, "Oh, I don't need these," and he puts them away. Clone does. Um, so his senses are as if he was a younger person again. That makes sense, but he would still have his preferences
I
until
took that as they fixed his senses. Like they took an average healthy person and then kind of gave them that, which is why his eyes are fixed. He did. It's not they're younger; they're just fixed because they could.
well, I don't mean to review my own time, of course, obviously.
Yeah,
Fix same. We're talking about the same thing here.
yeah. No, no,
Um,
we agree. Sorry. Go on.
yeah. So I link them. Sensory and memory. You have to remember what you censor, or what you sense. Well, I think they're one and the same in this.
Okay.
Kind of like linking emotions to memory as well. Thing.
All right.
Well, I don't
Um,
really have anything else for this episode other than in the prior one, Miles. Oh, I guess in the prior one I didn't really touch on it, but in the when Miles came home after being, you know, coming out of the grave and running home in underwear, he just got into the house, and it's kind of thought of, is there a spare key? How did he get in? Did he break in? And then it's shown in this episode that there is a spare key under a rock.
Yeah, very original. But yeah,
it's a
that's right.
classic spot, right?
Yeah,
And
it
I
is classic.
didn't touch it in the first one, but I like that it's also slightly foreshadowing that Miles at the time thinks his wife is with another man.
Yep. He just didn't know
Miles.
it was him.
Oh yeah.
um, I like that they compare surgery scars, or that Miles has surgery scars and Clone doesn't. Um, again, circumventing bullshit that they both recognize the value in one another as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I
what
I like it. I do see it as cliche. That's usually how you differ clones in storytelling. Is I got a scar from this from when I was a child. It's
uh,
usually
I
how
mean,
they go.
any other surface ideas then? Because I don't know one. Then again, I haven't read many clone stories, so
Well, it's
No,
not
I'm
exactly
just saying it's
clone.
cliche, not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, one that in that instance does come to mind where they keep the scar on the clone of somewhere is in the movie Face Off. He has a bullet wound scar, and I think, and he says, "Keep this," I believe.
you
But
know what
Yeah.
will happen? Quaritch will get the same scar he got in Avatar 1 eventually, and like in Avatar 4, and we'll think it's so poetic and it's so well done that
oh, and then you find out that actually the first four movies are all in the past.
yeah,
There's
because
time
obviously he's
travel.
gonna come back in
In
time
a
or
galaxy
whatever.
far, far
Nice.
away, correct, yes.
Yeah, whatever James Cameron gives us. All right, sorry, had to make a joke.
No, it's good. I think that's all I really have on this episode.
I guess I have one more question. What do you think of the blackmail scene?
I
Black.
liked it minus the part that they were talking while the phone was still active.
Yeah,
Because
because
those type of
like,
calls are recorded, even
yeah,
if the operator isn't present.
I'm
Oh
really
yeah.
happy that they play it back
Yeah.
um to him later that to show that it was obviously recorded. But yeah, I agree. Uh, I liked it except for that fact.
And I like that their accents went away. Trying
Yeah,
their whole explanation of selling an illusion to
Mhm.
ease everything.
I
I
like
think was great.
the confidence boost that the clone has, and Miles in the background just being like a hype man.
Essentially,
Like he agreed to it, but he has no clue what he would say. And even the clone's winging it, but his confidence booster is really putting him in a place of getting what he wants.
Mhm.
But yeah, if that's everything on to cover for episode 2, move on to
Yep.
episode 3, titled Green Tea.
all right, I'll talk about the sister because I think that's this episode. Yes, Maya or Maya, something along those lines. Said it on the subtitles. um, uh, it was interesting that the clone had already talked to her, and that was one of the things we didn't see, right?
No.
Am I
No, we
misremembering?
didn't see, and I wrote that down as a complaint. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't I want to see that reaction? It's like it's again one of those things. It's a profound thing that should have been in, like, I don't know, Luke Skywalker crying over Han's death in, say, a very bad movie that was made by a certain director. I obviously would love to see this character's reaction because this is our first time actually seeing the character. So her reaction would speak a lot as to who this character is, and we don't get that at all.
Yeah, there's that factor, and this factor is we usually see the other POV. We either go back and see the clone's point of view of a scene, or we go back and see Miles. But we never get to see the clone's point of view of this, and it kind of stands out because it's pretty much the only time that happens that is relevant, anyways.
I agree it stands out, but I'm on the opposite end of writer here, and I think it's better that it's not shown. And it might just be in the thought process I'm guessing of the writers that what is there to show strength or change for the clone by visiting the sister? It is shown through this interaction of Miles visiting his sister who already knows of the clone, character of Miles, and a little more development in him. And I don't know what
This would
that
be
would
more
do
development for the sister, not for Miles. I already said that.
for the sister. Okay, I don't think the sister's shown enough throughout the show that it would really matter.
It does matter in the sense that this is a character that's evidently really close to Miles. Or at least they
Okay.
talk.
Yeah, they talk. She's only in
It's
the show
important to, it's
twice.
important to establish a baseline for their relationship. And if this is our first scene with her, that would then it would not only give us a basis of the relationship with how they would initially greet each other, and then Clone telling her that, or at least Clone being honest with her would also give us an insight to their relationship as well. So I do think we would gain several things by being shown this.
Well, especially since through what we did get with Miles and her, they didn't have the best relationship, and she prefers the clone. So it'd have been nice to see her initial start on how she treated him, because right out the gate here, she's all happy and liking everything. It'd have been nice to see her treat Miles the way they normally would before Clone tells her he's a clone. That would have been nice to see that stuff.
Who knows? Maybe Clone could have gone over there to apologize. I mean, he has the memories, right? In
Yeah.
theory. So he could have come over there to apologize for their strained relationship too.
Uh, So I think I just would have better fleshed out things. It wouldn't necessarily add to the story, as you say, Sprinks, but I think it would have been better for it.
In the sense that it doesn't add anything to the plot, but it adds stuff for the characters. And characters are going to be what carries a bad plot if your plot's bad or your everything else is shit. If you have good characters, it'll still carry your story through to the end. So, um, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm still with my point that I don't think it would have done much to strengthen the clone. And the interaction that is shown with Miles shows development in his character. Not per se for the sister, because I think if the sister was in the show more and treated as a character as big as Kate, possibly, then yes, I would be in agreement that more of any interaction with the sister, with Miles' clone, or even Kate herself in some way, would have been a lot better. But she's only in it for 2 scenes.
Do you think the sister needed to be in this at all? That's my question.
For this first scene, not necessarily. For the
The,
second scene,
the
definitely better.
show as
Yeah,
a whole.
show as a
Do we need the
whole,
sister?
No,
no.
I could cut her out of the show. She's probably not needed. But they chose to show her, so
I think her second scene shown when she's clay sculpting is far stronger, and I keep saying strength and strong, um, better to be on 2 miles than in this first one. Something I did like is the angered Miles talking to the clone, who at this time, not necessarily, but Miles has been sitting around all day just getting drunk, and he calls the clone drunk on power. I think
Yeah,
that was a good back and forth.
I agree. It was a good interaction. Uh, I don't know. Miles is a little weird to me. Like what his character motivations are,
he wants
specifically
to.
when he isn't doing anything. I don't know what his goals are. We get to see, oh, I'm writing a play, but we see more of him drinking and watching adult movies than that. So it doesn't seem
It's
that big of a
slowly,
passion.
yeah, it's slowly like, sorry, it goes from like a the idea of a writer's getaway into more of like slug. I'm turning into a slug because I have no purpose now that I don't have a job, that sort of thing. So it's a transition.
I get the writing purpose. I'm more talking specifically his character, what what he's doing.
Well, I
Um,
think each time it cuts to him opening the laptop, it's a new day.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
So I think he's been at writing for 4 or 5 days, and then kind of just goes into watching videos and starts procrastinating.
Eventually, yeah. Like, any passion for a project will start falling off at some point, typically. That's kind of what I got, because he seems to be more of a situational writer than, like, uh, I guess it's part of your day. You're gonna write today, that sort of thing. Because, I mean, oh my god. So there's inspired writing, there's situational writing where you just write when you have the experience, and then there's the way I write, which is you write every day no matter what, or at least you try to. And he definitely comes across as a situational writer for me. Like the situation is right for him to write, but because of that, he doesn't necessarily have um the drive to just focus down in on it, which is why he slowly like gets off the path. And the drinking intercedes more, the porn intercedes more, that sort of thing. The distractions come into hyper focus.
Yeah, I
I
figured.
guess this go on.
I was gonna say I figured um, if anyone had a good output on the writing aspect shown in the show, it would be from writer.
I mean, there was the other aspect of it too, and I didn't get this reading from the show at all, but they could be trying to play at it because again, I don't know what story he's writing, so I can't really comment. It is his script a love story supposedly?
It's a play of something. I guess it's a love story.
He says like
He
it's
doesn't
like his
want
wife
a
is,
dark ending to it. I
yeah,
guess
like he says
that's all
his
we
wife
really
is
get.
the main character, right? Or it's based on his
He
wife.
he yeah. I think
Yes,
he
he did
said
say
he
the
was the main
character was him.
character.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if it's supposed to because if it's supposed to be a romance, then there's the angle like I don't think the show's going for this, but the porn could inspire it in like the more steamy aspects of the writing. I don't think the show's going for that, but that is also potentially another perspective you can take away.
I guess in
Well, I
that
think
that way, it's a just not necessarily throwaway line then saying it's a romance, but his way of handling his relationship with Kate, and that he
Yeah,
hasn't
because
written in a very long time, so it's shown that it's kind of died off because of how life has been
maybe,
going, and now he has like
uh,
the gusto to start back into it.
yeah, and then Well, this also gets more to the relationship aspect. Kate could have been in like part of his muse. So as their relationship degraded, so did the need for the hobby or the want for the play. Because as we see in some flashback scenes, like he's writing the play like at the height of their like honeymoon phase almost.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, my voice is leaving me. All right, give me a sec.
Right.
Um. No, I think
Uh, uh,
the writing of
s-
what Miles is doing is definitely a connection to his relationship with Kate.
uh, I agree. I guess my thing is his whole excuse of being like a depressed or person or not just enjoying life in general was work sucks, and that's pretty much most of it. Because then the rest of his days are grumpy, and then he ends up arguing with his wife because he's already grumpy. So far, a perpetual cycle.
Yeah, like
Um,
every little thing feeds into the next.
yeah. So without work eating him out the gate first thing every day, I feel like he'd want to do the things that Clone eventually wants to do with Kate, which is running with her, wanting to go on trips, because those were passions that Miles had before he became all cynical. Uh, so I don't know. I thought this vacation, I guess, from his own life would have granted him a little bit of happiness, but it ended up doing the opposite. But I think this writing bit is purely for foreshadowing purposes from the writers, because he says the main character of his story is himself, and he complains to Clone that he rewrote it to where the main character murders someone. And I wrote immediately murder foreshadow question mark. We almost get there by the end.
Certainly set up for tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much my 2 cents with the writing, I guess, or him being a
Um,
writer.
I guess I'm trying to think of what the differences could be. And this is just from my writing experience. So this is obviously all anecdotal. Audience, don't take it as fact. For everyone. Um, so one thing I do have noticed in my writing hobby is I have sacrificed a lot of things just to maintain it. There have been points where friendships have been strained. I'm sure you guys have been on the receiving end of some of that at some point where I didn't show up for something because I needed to write or something else that was related. Um, it's one of those things where like I think if he allotted himself free time without distractions, he might have eventually come around back around to like wanting to do being a more passionate with Kate. But because it's like he's drinking, writing, and then he fills his day with porn and potentially TV watching, movie watching, that sort of thing. He the distractions filled the day without necessarily letting him like the free time to think. And this juxtaposes the clone where he is pretty much arrives at his house and he just kind of snoops around. And I'm referring to clone in the episode where Miles is kidnapped by the FDA, where he's just kind of snoops around. He doesn't really go to the distractions. He just walks around the house, lays in bed, and he just thinks. It's a very very different kind of mentality where like one would lead you to the want of going on vacation and stuff like that, where the other you're just too distracted in the day to get muddled up by even the thought.
Okay.
I'm also trying to think. Kind of goes back to the whole wise clone different, but wouldn't he still have the same vices as Miles? Because we get Clone being pretty depressed, not just at the last episode, but throughout. He kind of gets hit with stuff. But we never see him like drink and watch adult films and stuff like Miles would.
Well,
Um,
he doesn't watch adult films, but he certainly looks at his pictures of his wife.
yeah. So it's interesting that he has different vices than Miles, even though he is Miles.
Well, do you think at that
Um,
point so it was shown there's been enough experience in the to differ the clone?
Which episode is he looking at the photos? Or is that when he's on the drive to the airport?
No, 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 no. This is on. I think that's like an. That's before the vacation, but they've already had their arrangement. He's living at his own place. So is that this episode or the next episode? Hold on, I'm gonna scan my notes.
That's the
I wrote it
next
down. So
one. Or next two. When Chloe's living with Kate, right? That's like episode
Clones
6
with
or
Clay
something.
Kate. I think that's 7.
7.
let's see.
So pretty far in. It's mm, I guess potentially, but I don't know. He's hit pretty hard throughout before they even moved in together. Like when Miles takes his place in bed. um, if I was Clone, I would have started drinking if I drank right there. But I don't know. Just an observation I had that they both react to negative emotions differently, and I don't necessarily know why they would. Because of eventually we get Clone drinking at the bar to meet Dan. But that's towards
Yeah,
the end.
that's true.
It might be a slow regression. I mean, like, I drink, but it's not necessarily my vice. Though it can become a vice if I'm pushed to a certain point. Like, I don't typically rely on it.
We haven't discussed it much, but this episode does hold something, at least to me, that stood out a lot, is the job Miles has. And this episode has the presentation at the Hillston residence.
Oh, with the
Mhm.
big boss.
Yeah, the older gentleman.
Uh,
And I really liked the story that I'm guessing Mr. Hillston shared with Miles privately in the room about when he was younger.
I
And
really
mhm.
wish we had more Hillston.
to me, it showed how intelligent the character of Hillston is and knows exactly what he's telling Miles.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a personal thing. I really would have loved to have my Hillston because I think he was my favorite character, and he was barely in this show. He
I mean,
he was awesome in that little
they,
bit.
they characterize him really, really well with what little screen time he has.
If you're gonna cheat, cheat well. So,
Um,
it was a solid story. Good.
I should point out that uh, as soon as the Hilson meeting's over, we have the strange car ripping off Miles's door as it drives off.
Now that we know that that's the FDA, that was stupid.
Oh yeah, it makes it even worse. But man, like I said, that's one thing that bothered me. It's rather inconsistent with that door and that they get in the same car. I feel like maybe he could have rented one that was the same, but that's just a waste of money for prolonged periods of time.
I guess
'Cause,
that's the thing that
if
I never caught.
Really,
I knew the
this is a
door got ripped
very
off.
visual thing.
Yeah, I knew the door got ripped off, but I never. Every time I saw the car after the point, it was either had no door on it or it was covered up.
There's the reason I noticed this is the scene where Clone goes back to the spa house in the red car, and he opens the door and goes inside.
Okay.
That's
The
that's when I noticed the door was there, and I'm like,
I
okay, I wrote that
yeah.
down as a
I didn't
visual
As I
flaw.
said, I didn't catch it. I can totally believe you because I also caught a flaw, I think, in an episode coming up. I think it's the next one.
There's a couple of visual flaws. I think the door was just the most noticeable because there was a scene where it got fucking ran over by a
Yes.
strange car, which I thought was set up for a very, very important B plot that was going to take place.
I mean, a B plot did take place, but not important.
Yeah.
Um, I like that the congratulated phone call Miles got while he was in the parking lot made Miles look so small. Like it's this big, we got the deal, way to go, congrats, and he's
There's a
tiny in an
days
empty
thing
parking
for
lot.
you.
Yeah, he's alone,
Yeah.
and I think that was just a good shot to use.
Hmm. I agree. I like the shot as well.
Anything else to
Um,
cover in episode 3?
let's see.
I guess at the very end when he reveals himself, um, I guess he's at rock bottom at this point in order to do that.
Yeah, that's what the rain
Uh,
is supposed to help you figure out. Yes.
even though we see that as not rock bottom because rock bottoms is where he's willing to kill him. Nonetheless, it was a cool moment, something I didn't expect to happen.
For
Uh,
being episode 3 in an 8-episode show, at
Very
least for my
bold.
first time, I was like, "What happens now? Where is this going?"
It's one of those things we circumvented a lot of unnecessary drama by doing this. We're introducing a new concept for drama once we've done this because this is again we're in more uncharted territory. And my next concern was the wife, and they go right into that almost. So
Yeah, and the clone tries to play it off, being like, "This is my brother. Oh, what's his name?" And he just goes, "Miles."
Miles.
Doesn't play along at all.
and then I didn't and I like that they tell Kate the truth. Uh,
Well, at that
I think it's the
point,
next.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I have for episode 3.
Yeah, actually, he
Uh,
brought it up to his sister before his own wife.
I know. I wrote that down too because you know, guess he wanted someone to talk to.
Right. We are past the point of where I have notes, so
All right.
it'll be
Episode 4 is
Soulmate. At least that's the title of the episode. Soulmate.
yeah.
Uh, I wrote
We
down
go through.
here. So, you know what? Ryder, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm just gonna summarize for Crimson. This is where we go through Clone's backstory of the day while he's off giving the pitch. So, like the aftermath of the dinner party that he and his wife hosted the previous night, and then switched places with OG Miles with Miles to have you know smexy times in bed, and then this goes up to uh, da, 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 da.
He's home and she comes home early and says, "Oh, we'll just go
Yeah,
together."
yeah, and that to me was like again more set up for B plot because obviously he wouldn't be the one knocking over Miles's door for any reason. Um,
Yeah, that's something I wrote in my notes because I forgot about the FDA at the end, and I went, if they took off his door, why did Kate not react or not like nothing was shown if she was in the car with him?
yeah,
But then it wasn't their car, so
um, and then we have the conversation at home, and then that goes up through they he wants to get his wife cloned. That's also in this episode, and then uh he starts going to dating apps at the end of this episode and finds his wife.
right. Yeah, I'll just go with the cloning his wife bit. Um, I don't know what he thought that would really accomplish, because either she thinks she's herself, or he tells her right at the gate that she's a clone. And he's already going to have her suffer through the same nonsense he's had to deal with.
I think the clone would kill her.
Uh,
I don't think he cared about that. He just wanted a partner, and he wanted his wife.
Yeah, he didn't want to share because it was already causing too much difficulty and drama to himself. But whether or not
okay.
to run away with the clone wife of
Like I
Kate
agree
or to
with
tell
you.
her,
It's not going to accomplish anything. But I would believe he's sort of irrational. So I think this is a decision he would eventually come to.
Because knowing what we know of Kate, she would have freaked out and been really, really mad at the clone.
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it would not be a happy relationship between those two, like I guess he thought it would. I don't know. I guess we'll never know how that turns out unless they explore that in season 2
Right.
somehow.
Also, I don't.
Gang, I'm gonna dip out for 20 minutes and refill my tea and take some more meds. I'll be back.
You got it. We'll continue on. I don't know if a hair sample of Kate would be enough to go with like into memories to make a clone, because when we saw Miles at the spa and they took the little swab out of his mouth and then sedated him, I feel like there was probably more that they ran tests to get more of than just a little saliva to clone him with.
Yeah, I agree. That was a problem I had as well. You wouldn't be able to get memories from DNA from hair.
Yeah. So I think it's
You'd be able to get the body of the person with the DNA, but not their thought, their memories.
so I think if they cloned Kate off of the hair sample that the clone gave, it would give a lot more problems. But being
I
that they
wish
didn't,
they
I
said
think it would.
that. The
Well,
small guys,
that's true.
hair is not enough. All they said was, "We don't do that here without her consent," and we've been having troubles ever since you blackmailed us and all that. Uh, so yeah, that would have been an easy thing for them to say. We don't do that, and even if we did, we would need her present anyways.
Yeah. So I guess that was just, I don't know if that's just their own way of saying it in that way of like, hey, we need more, without giving the secrets of like how what you need to clone, because they seem pretty darn secretive about it to begin with. But
You could. I'm just gonna assume oversight. Or
okay.
oversight? Well, the writers didn't think of it. That's all I'll
Something
say.
I caught on um in, I think it was the beginning of this, when it showed like the perspective change to the clone for the day, and he was upstairs and he decided to start writing. I saw it as an evil thing, and this is something I wanted to pitch to writer, but I let him say what he wanted. The clone didn't make a saved copy of original Miles's play. He just
Mhm.
deleted all of it and started all over. And I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty evil thing to do, but it's also in a way showing that the clone didn't make a copy. I know it's really
Um,
small and niche, but the clone didn't make a clone of the writing.
I don't think that's their intention, but I like it. It's that nice observation. But I agree. I have the same sentiment of that was pretty dark of him to do because we we know it was probably about a week's worth of writing from what we saw through the days they jumped through.
Yeah.
So it's quite the setback.
There.
Plus,
Oh,
well, I was gonna say a good writer would have backups, but the clone would probably know about the backups. Just get rid of that
probably.
too. So yeah, never.
Um, one. So Ryder touched on the car door and being there, and not being there, and it's a little. I didn't catch it because of the time jumps, and I thought that was maybe where it fit. So maybe one was in there, but he gave an example. Something I noticed a little bit was the wedding ring. There's only one wedding ring, two of them, and there were points where it didn't make sense why one had it in that scene, or instances where it's shown that either Miles or the clone has it, and in an interaction with Kate, that one doesn't have the wedding ring, and Kate didn't notice. And I know it's
Mhm.
a very small detail on someone, but I think your spouse, if anyone, would notice it. Not necessarily
They would have a
because
higher chance. Yeah.
I wrote it down when I noticed it when the receptionist, I think it was the clone, asked the receptionist out, and he had his wedding ring on at that point. And I mean, of course, she knows he's married, but I forget where I wrote that, if I even did. But the wedding ring was just a detail that was back and forth that I wasn't. It was okay because of how small it is, and there's a lot of angles where his hand isn't shown, but it was still something
Glad you bring up the receptionist because that was an issue I had.
with the
So
receptionist.
we're supposed to believe that the clone's like the perfect Miles, and We see throughout this he's way more lovey-dovey towards Kate than Miles is. So it's weird to me that he would go with the receptionist. We do, I guess, get some groundwork with Miles being like, "Oh, she likes me." So if Miles is thinking that, then Clone might have as well. But he put on a face being the positive, good one. But it seemed a little out of Clone's character for me that he did that.
I thought it was okay in character because I believe when he went to with the hair sample to clone, they told him then move on, or someone said something like there's many fish in the sea to the clone about his
The
wife.
sister,
The sister said
right?
okay, and said to move on about it because Kate's taken by Miles. So, and that was before the receptionist thing. So I think that was his way of trying it out, seeing how it went, because it only shows him with the receptionist. It's not him going on a night to night basis of one night stands, trying it out, see what works.
Well, he tried on the dating app. He just got lucky and found his wife.
Yeah, true. Um, I'm just saying with the receptionist, it was a one time try kind of deal, and then he went to the dating app. So I think it was in character, at
It's
least to him understanding of being like, okay, I am the clone. So Kate is Miles' wife, kind of thing. So she belong, and even during the sit down, she talks about to the clone like, I don't know what you are, who you are. My husband is Miles, right there, kind of thing. Um, so the clone has these thoughts of like, okay, I should move on and do something. So the attempt, I think, was fine.
okay.
And it also kind of shows his character in like the confusion of during the sex scene of not really understand, like he's not, it's not shown that he's comfortable with the matter of it, so I definitely presume that Kate's still on his mind during this whole interaction and things, but he's at least trying to move on in some way.
I'd like to know writer's opinion on it. Darn it.
um I think we, I don't know if we touched on this a little at the very beginning, jumping ahead to like episodes kind of thing, but in the scene of Kate talking to Miles and the clone is sitting upright and his posture is real good while Miles is slouched into the couch.
Hmm.
So one looks, the clone's definitely more attentive to the situation, and Miles is, I think, embarrassed of the matter of not telling her sooner, not telling Kate sooner.
Yeah, I guess so. It's more of a visual difference pretty much the entirety of the show that Miles is a sloucher and Clone is not for visual aid purposes.
Yes. And you would say that's on body, right? The
Would be
body's
what?
because of his
Oh,
body, like his body aches more, he wants to get more comfortable.
yeah. Well, over time, your spine compresses, and if you have bad posture your whole life, it can shape your spine. This is a new spine, so you'd have good posture.
Okay.
Plus, it also reflects their emotional states. The slouch makes him look more depressed, while the straight back, happy man seems more happy. Kind of
Uh,
twofold.
gotcha. So I took that a bit. Go ahead. You, if you'd like, popcorn to something in the episode. That didn't seem naturally
Um,
said. I'm sorry.
that's right. Uh, I guess it's not specific to this episode, but we kind of talked on it, but not the specific part. I actually saw wardrobe stuff in
Oh,
this.
you did,
Isn't that crazy?
coming from you.
Uh, No, see, in here it seems very, very obviously intentional. Where kind of like the postures and the hair, and you brought up even their faces a little bit. Where Miles, he's got more of like a gray tone to him from the makeup
Yeah.
department. Um, the clothing is also very apparent on which is which as well. clone is typically in a clean getup. They even reflect this on the suicide bit on the final episode. Like changes outfits to be more himself,
Yeah.
um, which kind of brings up why Miles is so different, but or clone is different. But we've covered enough of that. Why are the toys hollow? Um, Reference there for any viewers that have been watching our stuff. So I did notice it that he clones clean. Miles is not, especially when clone thinks he's so dirty that he has to spit toothpaste on his shirt or
Yeah.
whatever to try to copy him. He thinks he's that sloppy.
I mean, it works. Pulls it off. Messes with his hair. Lowers his shoulders.
We never got to see if that would work because real Miles showed up and cut him
Yeah.
off.
Now,
But that's fair.
something we talked about that a little earlier, but this is the episode with the scene in it when this. So the first time showed Miles visiting the sister as Miles, and this time the second scene of the sister is of the clone visiting on a second, you know, second or third, how many times he's visited. Something I was curious about. I'm assuming that the clone called and said he was on his way. Otherwise, the sister could easily tell the difference between the two when she opened the door. And I think
Hmm.
either fit. I think she would be perspective enough, or she would be, um, what's the word?
Apparent enough?
Observant. She would be observant
Yeah,
enough to spot the difference between her actual brother Miles and the clone.
well, yeah, and like we brought up, Kate's able to, but she didn't realize it was two different people until it was revealed to her.
Yeah.
So I agree. Did you by chance recognize who the sister was?
The actress knew.
She was maybe from Arrested Development, the cousin that.
I don't watch that show. So.
Yeah, you saw a few episodes though. Michael Sarah's cousin that he has a crush on.
Oh, banana stand. Gotcha.
Yes, yeah, but I understand.
Yep. Nope. Didn't recognize.
Um,
Um,
let's
I think the intentions that the clone does to cut the hair and sneak into the house and get the clone is all out of his aspect, his viewpoint of love. Even though it could, it's from another perspective, extremely creepy. Needs to move on. It's an obsession kind of thing. But with the memories of this is your wife who you've been married to for at least 5 years. So
Yeah, I agree. That's what's gone through his headspace. I do think that Miles would have hidden the key once
once he told the
he
clone to get out, yeah.
to move out. Yeah, I think he would have moved it. Because we do get to see Clone very creepily enter the house and steal the hair. That's so. I think that's a little weird. I guess he could have moved it, and then Clone would be like, "If I were to move the key, where would I put it?" But we didn't get to see that. That would have been a kind of interesting little thing. Check the rock, nothing, and he's like, "Gosh, shoot, where would I hide it again?" And then he finds it there. That would kind of be a neat little aspect.
I guess so.
There's not really much more I got for this one. What about you?
The ending, I think, is another add to the plot thickening that she has a dating profile. Kate does.
Yeah,
Just another aspect, like the past episode was Miles revealing himself at the Fridays, kind of having both clones in the same area. And this is just another drama added on.
it's also convenient that it was her because even with, I would imagine, dating apps, um, they give you incorrect assessments. Because I would imagine he did her exact attributes, which I'm pretty sure he did, and then the computer or app would be like, okay, she's the closest person, but what if she wasn't? What if
Well,
it's
I
within
think
a radius
yeah,
and it just happened to be her? I'm sure there's a bunch of compatible people in the area, and the fact that it happened to be her, I think, is a bit convenient.
the what I can tell you is having it in the background, as you can see right now. Um, it does have the status of lives within 1 mile, so it's at least
Oh, it was
one
one
mile.
mile.
Yeah,
Okay, that does make it more believable.
which is saying that now. What a really silly thing to say. 1 mile.
I'm trying to think.
It was
So
in
you theorized that Miles thought she was cheating at some point? What point in the story were you saying that?
oh at the in the episode 1 when Miles comes home after being buried alive, and um he hears Kate upstairs with someone.
Oh, okay. Oh, that was something I didn't comment on in episode one. The freaking reflexes. That was insane.
To
He was
dodge out away from the
he
axe.
was a Jedi.
Well,
he could
well, as you said, he
he
has a
couldn't have
new
even seen
body.
them in time.
He's quick, nimble.
That was near superhuman. Um, okay, so I guess that doesn't really help what my theory was going to be then, because if it's 1 mile, then that must mean he's looking for his wife on this app, and I'm trying to think why he would think she's on there.
I don't. Well, no, I don't think he was necessarily looking for Kate. I think he had a certain range. I don't know what it was because I think it just
Like,
shows his face to the computer, but it could be within like 15-mile radius, and it's just showing her profile of within a mile.
so, okay, that's when her profile pops up, but when we get to see him look up stuff, right? His preferences, that's a page, isn't it?
I think, yeah.
Does it show him inputting a radius on that?
Maybe. Let me check.
'Cause, I thought you said he was looking for
There's
someone in a mile radius, and that would be
age,
absurd.
body type, hair color, occupation, smoking. Next to occupation says live with, and it does not show him put in anything. So we
Okay.
don't know the range of how far he looked up how far someone compatible would be. But when her profile comes up, states that she's within 1 mile.
Welcome
I
back, Ryder.
still on the dating thing, or did I miss context for this?
We're pretty much
Uh,
at the end of episode 4 right now. Speaking, Crimson thinks it's convenient that the one profile came in. Yeah, the one profile that came up on the dating site was Kate, um, within a radius, but it was never shown how far the clone put in uh miles, like how far out someone would be.
That's true. It doesn't. He's also very, very specific, which I think is helps, but yeah, it's a little on the convenient side. Not necessarily bad, just something to note.
what was the? Yes, I had one specific question for you, Ryder, or your
Yep. So,
opinion on. So the receptionist, I thought it was outside the clone's character to even try with her. What do you think?
um, well, it depends. Again, this we need his relationship with his sister to be contextualized because this is advice he gets from his sister, and this is what prompts him to kind of do this, right?
Yeah,
So
other fish in the sea.
yeah, so with what we have, I don't think it's within character. What could potentially make it in character is if we have more between him and his sister and more context to that relationship. Um, and that's purely because he's doing this specifically because of the advice he's gotten from her, and like even if even if she had to talk him into it, which she sort of does with the conversation. So there's enough there, like there's enough for me to want to interpret that particular angle if I were reworking this script a little bit. With what we have, like with the devotion to his wife, even though he has the understanding of like he may not potentially have her, it's um it's a bit of a jump. So I guess that's my 2 cents on that. Did
Chris,
I?
did you have anything for him through this episode that
Um,
we already covered and you wanted to know?
I don't think so. Oh, I brought
Um,
up that earlier. You said that the car door was finicky, being here and there and sporadic. I felt that way with the wedding ring,
yeah.
which I caught in this episode.
Also spreading. Um, did you guys talk about them being honest with Kate? That scene.
Touched on it a little.
Not too much.
Okay. I mean I have nothing to say other than I think the conclusion of it is sensible for the drama. Like it makes sense, and I also really like the that Miles like thanks the clone genuinely after dropping him off at the Hilton or the place that he's staying at for the time being.
Hmm.
Um, it's actually quite endearing and honest to Miles' character in that like he's not angry at the clone. Like at the end of the day, like he knows how like he can see the differences and he knows his wife can too. Like she appreciates them in her own way. Um, and then that. Oh yeah, this is also the episode where we have him jerking off or masturbating specifically to photos of his wife.
Yeah,
I think that's all I
a
have
few
for this
times.
episode. Yeah. I like with the writing. I take that as each a different day or a different night. Well, actually, no,
It
that's
could have been
recontextualized later.
consecutive. Yeah.
Yeah,
Could have
no,
been the
that's
same day.
recontextualized later. No, it could be same day. Perks and troubles or whatever Dan said.
Well, that's all I
Uh,
have on episode
that's all
4.
I got.
All right. So then we'll move on to episode 5 called Va Bene, which is pretty much the Kate episode.
Uh,
And I'll start with how I like the clever start of this episode of Kate opening her eyes with the slight idea that this could be a clone of her, because it would be matching how the clone of Miles woke up in episode 2
yeah,
You
I
mean it's
think
shot? You
I
shot? You
like
think it's
that.
shot visually to
to make it
evoke that?
to make it feel like it could be, and then it shows that it's actually in the past and they're at a hospital kind of thing.
Yeah. I love. I enjoyed the visual joke, like what was it, 1800 days BC?
Yeah,
Before
before
cloning.
clone.
Yeah.
And I did the math
I
on that. It is 5 years and 13 days.
all right, fair enough.
We've been trying to have a baby for 5 years, and he can produce a child. That's very unlucky. Wow.
Well, after 2 years of postponing the
Well,
meeting.
postponing checkup, but
Yeah, well, there.
it
The
doesn't mean
assumption
they're
is that we
not
don't.
trying.
The assumption is that we don't know like how often they're trying.
Yeah. Uh, but we get to see their relationship early on when they're house hunting. Or I guess he already bought the house. Is that what happened?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like how we see Miles actually have life in him. That he
like
wasn't
yeah,
always this, you know, gruddy kind of person.
Yeah.
wasn't
Before he got
always
his
hit with
job.
depression.
Yeah, he actually did have life in him, which I think helps why Kate wasn't so exactly shocked when the clone entered the life and Miles changed, because there was a time of Kate's life where Miles did act like this and was like this kind of person. So she's
Yeah.
not too off about it, but she knows there's something up. So I think this backstory of that helps.
Um,
I guess I have a question. It just popped in my mind, even though we kind of covered the clone physical body. Is wouldn't the skin be new skin if they're getting new muscle mass and stuff to be healthier and getting better eyesight and all that? Wouldn't the skin be like new skin as well, baby skin?
I
I don't know if it
I would
goes
say
that far.
yes, as in growing a clone to make a clone in that context. Yeah, it would be new skin, but the skin would have to match the physical appearance of whoever it is. So with the wrinkles and whatnot, to make it be a clone.
Well, that goes more into tampering because if they were just going to do a one-to-one visual change, then his eyes would still be bad because that's a physical attribute of eyes. Whatever is wrong with his eyes is physical. So they would have had to physically change the eyes in the clone or type it in their computer, changing the DNA. Either way, there would have to be some
Well, they already
manual input
yeah, they
in
already say that
in that.
they perfect the genetics of the person, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. I just think it would still feel like new skin. That's right.
That could be. Um,
Don't know to the degree.
little detail I liked in this. We know that Miles is a writer with the play he writes, but when he's painting the baby's room, there is no stencil sketch, there is no outline, and it's all freehand of the hot air balloon with the elephant. So Miles is also a painter. It's my best guess because we've seen the room when it's fully painted and done. I think prior when he's looking for stuff, which is kind of turns into their junk room, and it doesn't have errors or like look bad, at least to me at all.
Crimson, that's
Well,
your ball. So
um, in regards, I'd have to look at it again. But usually, when you do big pieces like that on walls, you use tape as your stencil.
Painter's tape,
So,
yeah.
from what I'm recalling, I remember like outline of the hot air balloon, and we see him trying to fill it in. So, because those lines are too perfect to freehand. So I imagine he just used painter's tape, and we just see him filling it in.
Okay.
But yeah, you'd still have to be skillful in order to do that. So I agree. He's got some artistic bones in there somewhere.
How do you two feel? Because I think this is pretty much the first episode that swapped the perspective of either Miles or clones to put it more onto Kate, to boost Kate's character. Do you think that was needed?
Yes,
for the ending, yes.
Okay.
and quite liked it.
Mhm.
I
And
like the change that it wasn't repetitive of back and forth each episode. Of
yeah,
like, oh, I know what the next episode's gonna be tackling, kind of thing.
when you asked the question, I don't know if it was before the pod or during the pod about it being too much Paul Rudd. I think this is one of the this is one of our kind of breaks from the focusing on him, like because we spend a lot of time with Kate in this episode, and I think that's to the show's benefit. So it allows us to breathe and time apart from Miles.
Yeah,
And
that was before we started recording. I during our little pleasantries before we start, a little, peek behind the curtain, I said, "How much Paul Rudd is too much Paul Rudd?" So it is a nice break of character, or a nice break of actor. I'll say,
mhm.
taking the limelight.
Uh, and in this, we got to see her work specifically with the marble floor because we heard about the marble floor and her stupid boss, like I guess technically boss, person who hired her.
Her
Um,
client.
yes, her client, and now we actually got to see. And this guy, he's a tool, and
He's
Absolutely.
the
some
way she snapped at him was perfect. And I love how he didn't retaliate. He's like, "I'm 48."
that I wrote that down. I that was a joke that I thought was funny. Is his excuses? I'm 48.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
It,
Yeah.
it, it hurt him because he realized she was right.
Yep. Um,
Did we find out if she did get fired or not? That was kind of the last of the tile story, wasn't it?
yeah, we also don't really get much more of it.
Yeah,
So
I don't think
no.
it's really shown.
Well, actually, no. She goes to a conference, right? Oh, well, like an actually goes to a conference, even though it's with
Clone.
clone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess she didn't get fired because if
I
she
mean,
got
yeah, they
fired,
go
I
to
don't
New
think she'd be
York.
going.
Well, it's her own business, isn't it? At least that's what it sounded like
Yes.
from Miles
Oh, you,
earlier.
you mean specifically from that particular client? The
Yeah, from
client
that
fired
client.
her.
Yeah.
Okay, and then yeah, I don't know.
We
Okay.
also get to meet Kate's business partner, which I didn't pick up her name,
I don't know if they said it,
but it's nice that
but you know,
she's a friend, definitely more of a friend than just a coworker, to keep Kate's, I guess, sanity with living with Miles. They're recently stable and on
Eh,
track a bit.
sh-
Kate isn't the person to constantly like complain and say like, "Oh man, you will never believe what Miles did last night," kind of thing. Even though he
Mhm.
did call and just kind of mumbled.
Yeah,
But
I like that. Her friend helps her steal the fucking furniture
credenza.
piece. Credenza. Thank you. I'm gonna keep referring that to you because I can't for the life of me
he,
remember that
They
I
name.
just
said
think
it
of a
so many
flower every time I
times.
hear that word.
Oh,
Credenza.
Credenza
I
sounds
mean,
like a
they
flower.
said it so many times, and it's an article of furniture that I've never hear about like ever. So it just
Yeah,
stuck with me.
they said it so many times and somehow I still keep forgetting it. That's
Same.
um. But yeah, she helps her steal the credenza, and we also see the happy times and the decline into like you know the week before the BC. Up until he gets cloned and stuff like that. And we can see that she's deleting and ignoring all the messages from the dating app that she started.
Yes, and that brings up a detail I did really like is when she's at work and a message pops up about low balance from the bank and immediately gets covered by a notification from the dating. So it's real fast. So it's not something she really could process fully of what was it kind of thing.
And we do hear a comment from her, I think, in an earlier episode too, where she's like, "I got a notification from the bank's low balance or whatever."
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it just helps when she goes to the I guess sperm donor uh, building and has a call with the bank because at that
Yep.
point it wasn't very big.
And that was a pretty big decision by her to make that decision without Miles of
Oh yeah, just
having a donor. That's pretty big. I I don't know if I liked that out of her, but
I
we
think it
have seen
was.
her as desperate.
I,
So
it's. I think it's half desperation and half spite. Like, he didn't make the decision to get the clone, but it's a result of what the choice he made without telling her. So I do think it's part desperation and part spite.
great way to build a relationship on spite. It was interesting that she took a test at the client's house instead of waiting to get home because she was at work during that, right, with the client when she took that test.
I believe
yes,
so.
because the door was open and it was still like being renovated.
Yeah.
Um, the ending to this one does again make the plot and the drama add more, but to me it wasn't as surprising as the past two little endings.
Yeah, where she's
Um,
Hmm.
sorting through all the messages.
yeah, it's pretty obvious who she's meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, Dan.
Oh yeah, sure.
What a twist. I would have loved that.
If it was
I view
Dan,
Going
this
out
as
with
I
Dan.
view this as more like payoff to the setup of the setup of the promise of the previous episodes ending. So this is just payoff for it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like set up for the next episode's drama. This is just the
Stay
conclusion
tuned to
of it.
explore this
Yeah.
part of the story.
Yeah. Um. Let's
Anything else
see.
to be touched on in this one? I think that's pretty much for me.
Uh. I the conversation between once we're caught up, and she asks Miles why she didn't tell him. Miles gives a pretty brutal answer. I think it's in character.
Oh, when it
I
doesn't involve
think
you.
yeah. Uh, at this point, I think he. I don't know if he has the wherewithal to try and rephrase it. That one came a little close to me of like hitting the like drama for the sake of drama dialogue. Um,
I'm inclined to
because
agree.
presumably she was very angry, and this is a point where she's not as angry anymore, and she's trying to be more reasonable. She just wants an honest answer, and his response was to be bitter and angry, even though they both already had their time doing that. So this was one thing that stood out a little more on the bad side of the dialogue for me. So,
Okay.
but I do like the intention of the scene, and I think it feeds more into the spite of her going into the clinic on her own.
Yeah, I definitely think it adds with that. Crimson, it sounded like you were on the other side of that.
Oh, I said I was inclined to agree
Oh, to
that
agree.
it was
Okay.
teetering on the manufactured drama because it was already kind of covered stuff already.
Okay.
Mm.
I do agree that that line was used definitely for the drama aspect of it, but I think it's in character because Miles sees this as more of Work's fault of why he is the way he is, and is Kate doesn't have anything to do with his work. But then I mean, it's also Kate being what he goes to at home, but Miles doesn't see that as a problem, or she's not adding a problem to his life. So that's why I think what he said was fine.
I said it teeters on the edge. I don't think it fully goes in there because, like I said, that interpretation there's breathing room for that to exist. That's why I think it just teeters, but we haven't crossed the boundary. But I think I note it down because it is the closest that we get to it.
Gotcha. Anything else for episode 5? Va bene.
It's just when she steals the Grizz and
Yes. Wow.
I can't say
Yes.
it.
Yes, her and her friend steal the credenza, which was supposed to be
Credenza.
$1,000 to Goodwill.
Yeah,
I
that
brought
guy
that
was
up.
stupid.
You brought that up. Feel free to ignore me, but go on.
Well, oh, you're right. You did. Well, I'll say my little piece on it. That guy was stupid. All right, we're done. I don't know. He knows it was going to Goodwill, right?
Well,
He acknowledged them as the Goodwill people,
yeah.
and then they lied to him about
He
their reasoning
profiled
for
them
being
as
there.
the Goodwill people. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
he does know what Goodwill is, right?
yeah. In theory,
So that was dumb. I'm done with this episode.
Okie doke. I guess we'll move on to episode 6, Neighbors and Friends, which is an episode
uh,
that I don't think had. Was the clone even in this episode?
Um, is this the presentation?
Yeah. This is with
this is the
Ray.
town
I think
hall,
so.
right?
Yeah, this is the Hilston pitch to
Yeah,
Yeah, I
the
don't
tell
think
the
town
so.
farmers and
hall.
whatnot.
Yeah, I don't think the clone isn't in her at all, but Miles is trying to contact him.
Yeah, it always goes to voicemail. I have in my notes the title is really spazzing out now. I think this is where like the 3D rainbow effect starts going and the letters start swapping sides and
Yeah, episode 6. That's when I said I
yeah.
started noticing it.
Yeah, it was the most obvious part, one where the changes were happening.
And earlier
Um,
on in my notes, I'll say my piece and then someone else can go. I see that Miles through the use of the clone and how his perspective on things is changing. He's changing for the better. He's trying to be a better person because of everything he's seen. And Kate is getting worse because she's going out on this vacation kind of thing with the clone and like moving away from her husband. And I think that's just another balance thing that they added.
She cheated on her husband with her husband. How many people can say that?
No, only with clones.
It's impressive. Um, let's see. Uh, I think the
Uh,
title of the episode. How did this? What was the start of this episode? Because most episodes have like a very very dramatic like start before the
we see
credits.
the crate, the pig crate at the door. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, there
And
we
then it
go.
cuts to the title.
Okay, yeah. Um, I
Which I don't know
remember.
if they were trying to imply that there was a body in there or what, because I didn't really think anything of it. But in retrospect, I don't know if that's what they were going for, because that's what they tried to do. I think in the
There's
garage is like,
no.
oh, is it the clone in there?
There's no. There was no. I mean, because the clone's not here and he's missing the whole episode. Obviously, I think that's what they're trying to imply, but they definitely don't do enough to get me to ever think that there was a body in there.
Only
Yeah,
reason
because
I would,
I know they were trying for the garage, but this first
yeah,
scene, I don't know what they wanted the audience to think about that crate.
I
I,
couldn't,
I thought it was. I thought it was set up for the B plot. That's not relevant.
I couldn't, I can't remember what I initially thought when I first viewed this, but on my second viewing, I think it was simply just the size of it to make it seem like a body could be in there. But I didn't think it was a clone, or a clone version of Kate, or I don't know, some other dead body like Dan's clone or something. I don't know.
So I
Mm.
think the writers want us to think it was a body of some
Yes,
sort,
because of the
and that
shape
was
of
the
it and
hook.
the size.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was just set up for the B plot that never manifested. Um,
Speaking of plots and whatnot, I like that the whole work thing with Hilston isn't necessarily just kind of ignored. It has its whole story of going with the pitch and the plan and talking to Hilston himself, and now this town hall meeting, and like it just continues going and isn't just set aside.
Mhm.
I like that it actually does keep growing and does connect to both Miles and the clone and everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
this we get to see the rival company
Oh
pitching for
yeah, the dude who
the
pees on him.
towers. Yes, and
yeah. But we'll
at
get to
that
that, I
point in the
suppose.
yeah, at that point in the bathroom, I was like, okay, this guy could be an antagonist. It'll be interesting to see what he does. And then once Miles gets kidnapped at some point, I'm like, okay, it's the company kidnapping him, because I would have complained if it was clone because he was too far. So I thought the company was kidnapping him for some reason, and then it was the FDA, and that was it. We this rival company, this guy in the bathroom was pretty irrelevant. I don't know what the whole point of the rival company was for the most part.
I think he just gave a threat to Miles because he said something along the lines of like, "What you're doing is liability against the law" or something. Um, and I think it's added in there to as a representative of the towers, which is ongoing and actually happening. Um, it's used to be an idea of they could be the kidnappers at the end of the episode when Miles gets kidnapped, but then it's revealed
Yeah.
something else.
You think they're just there for a misdirect?
Yes.
Yeah. They have obviously they have reason to be there, but I do think they're there just for the misdirect.
Okay, kind of lame.
Yeah.
Something I caught during the town meeting, there was a wide shot of the room to show everyone on the tables, and you can see Paul Rudd Miles hiding behind the column.
Yep.
So they actually put him in there for that shot, which I think was just, it's a nice detail to add. So it's not overlooked like, oh, where is he? It's like, oh, he's leaning back and you can't see him behind the column kind of thing.
hmm Um.
Ryder, you brought it up
Let's.
earlier that you wanted a story out of Miles in comparison with what the clone does, but this one's fake. That's in this episode.
I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, I'm a little confused with that.
Yeah, no, I'm confused too.
Oh, I thought earlier we were discussing that one of the things between Miles and the clone was
Oh, yeah,
the clone told stories in a different way of like happiness, and it would
yeah, yeah.
help
Oh,
No,
with.
okay.
yeah,
The
yeah,
way you
no.
phrased
See,
it was confusing. Okay.
Sorry.
yeah. So I mean, yeah. Okay, I know what you mean. So yeah, the story that Miles tells is not truthful, as we find out later. He tells it with this in the same manner that clone might, but the difference is this one isn't. This one's a faux story, which I think kind of dampens the character trait for the original Miles a little bit. In that, like, I think we should have heard him at least try to tell a story earlier on and be really terrible at it, or uh, in just that, like, this is one of the core traits that they share almost. So that's also set up for this a little earlier on when he takes the it takes it for a twist, I guess. But the main reason I think I wanted it, at least I brought up earlier, is this was just not real. And I think to give us a more of a basis on their differences or and their ability to tell a story is if his story was a real one.
Yeah.
I think that was the context they brought it up in.
Okay. Um, Brian, do you think his story would have been enough? Because right now these country folk are pretty stereotyped. Uh,
Well, them being stereotyped country folk, his story is enough. Yes.
okay.
I think his
um,
Right.
story strengthens the group more, being that his name was called to be the representative to everyone in the town that they were waiting on to hear from. And this is how he kind of uses his name to this group of speaking to something way more, even though it's fake, a more personal story that I don't think he would have shared if he was up on stage. He would have definitely been more to the presentation and the fakiness of the slideshow that was said to
in a way, I think it in a way it does play a little bit into his storytelling strengths because the clone when he tells stories they're always personal. Even in his presentations, he makes it personal. The inspiration comes from the idea of your neighbor and friend. So I do think he is playing to his strength here. Um, yeah.
I think I don't it's not necessarily a balance, but I like at least how it's played out in the story of the show. That when the clone first gave a pitch of the Hillston situation program, Neighbors and Friends, it was in the meeting room. And that was his big pitch and sell point, and everything afterwards at Hillston residence and here at the town hall meeting is just from Miles. So the clone got him the step in, but what we see the actual bigger presentations to be shared are from Miles and not the clone. And I think that's better.
All right.
Because I think if the clone did it, it would be a 1-2 done kind of situation. Maybe in the town hall, it would have been a little more irritated from the country folk because the clone would have spoken more from the job aspect than to the people.
Also, really, really lucky the old man read the magazine at
Thanks for
all.
bringing that up. Yeah, very, very convenient.
That Ray saw the brochure.
Yeah, Ray saw the brochure, read the whole brochure, found the story that Miles used, and twisted to his own favor. That's the I I like the conclusion in that even when he succeeds, he still lost somehow. But I think it's kind of random, unfortunately. Like it's very convenient that Ray found it, read it.
I
I
find
do
it a
like
bit,
Ray's reaction.
yeah,
Where he wasn't
disappointed.
angry, he was disappointed.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. Like I said, this is I like the reaction enough and like the theme of it enough where I'd want to keep it in, but I think this could be smoothed over.
because um, Miles's story that he did share being fake was still a spark of hope that your farms and everything can still be what they are without the cellular towers and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's still a hopeful thing to be said to the countrymen.
Do you guys think we should have seen the other company's presentation at all?
No, especially since it was a what did we call it? A diversion to be thrown in there. I think it would have just been more wasted time.
There's a way it could work, but I think I'm mostly on the springs for that one. We don't necessarily need to see it. The mo-
Okay.
we don't necessarily need to see it, but I wouldn't mind seeing perhaps like the reaction to it.
I think it could have been fine in a way of they go up and it would have like muffled the audio a little or like made it quieter while they're presenting and focused more on what Miles was doing
Yeah.
to show that they're presenting and still up there, but it's not the focused point kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, that's pretty much all I really have on this episode. It was all kind of focused on the town hall.
That was the main focus. It
I'll
was
talk
probably
about the clinic then, where he has to give a sample, and I don't know if it's normal procedure. Would they have a bunch of creepy babies watching you while you do your thing?
I, would- I don't know, and I wrote that down on my notes. Is like if I have to masturbate for the fertility clinic, I don't know if I want baby pictures around me. That would feel off to me.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
so I don't know if that's standard procedure. I do think that it's a appropriately awkward and funny. His interactions with the guy at the
You
desk. Yeah. Um,
are you gonna be listening to me this whole time?
yeah.
And then no
Hello.
response.
Hmm.
I also like him making a point of carrying it out and just dropping it at the desk. Like you could just leave.
Yeah, just a little payback on that.
Let's see.
Every time
We
he's canceled and retransferred it over. So, like I said, I like the little spitefulness. Like, it makes it feel more human, but it's not because it's not necessarily malicious. It's just making things uncomfortable for other people, which I view as better than being malicious, I guess, in my scale. So,
yeah. The pig reveal uh, kind of seems like unnecessary runtime in this, especially
yeah,
since it didn't really contribute to anything. I'm like, oh, okay, there's blood on the cloth. Maybe got blood on him, and that's going to do something. Didn't come of it. When he hits it with the car, I'm like, oh, blood on the car. That might be something. Nothing. So I was trying to figure out why the pig was in this at all, and I don't
it's
think
a
there's really an
it's a
answer.
it's a message from the old man, right?
It's from
Yeah,
Hillston about here's a ration because his story was like taking rations, and because of him, they won and went through. So that was his reward from Hillston.
Which is fucking weird, but okay.
yeah. And then he brings it up to his wife. Oh, is it about the pig in the garage? And like, no, what? So it just seemed like a waste of runtime. Especially the show has would probably be like 20 minutes shorter if they didn't have all the uh, re- review stuff. Like when we keep catching up to modern day. So it seems like that time for the pig could have been used elsewhere, I would imagine.
um,
Okay.
let's see what else.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think. Uh,
Well, I guess in the beginning, the I need to
yeah,
write
oh
this
yeah, yeah.
down.
The credenza is being taken
Credenza.
by Kate to the clone's house.
Yeah. And Miles knows what's going on because she brings up that clone paid the 20,000 back. When after she leaves, he goes inside and gets a call from the clinic, and he's just standing there looking at where the desk was. So I think that definitely pushed him towards the clinic to, as I think Spring said earlier, that he's to better himself. He's getting better throughout this.
Trying.
Yeah. But other than that, that's all I got for this episode.
I think the last note I have is he's kidnapped at the end of this episode. And I think he spots clone version of himself before uh, he gets like black hooded and
And taken
dragged
away.
away, and that's yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, finally, B plot that I've been suspecting was coming finally. And then we'll get to
Then
the
we
rest
get
Kind
of
of.
the awesome FDA.
that. I mean, I imagine their cloning department is really underfunded, but this
Well,
is
yeah, they work in
like
children's
this
vitamins.
is fucking ridiculous, is what it
The
is.
FDA was the worst part of this show.
Absolutely.
I hated it. But that's on this next episode. Continue.
Well,
Sprinks,
actually, no. We go on to episode 7, Pina Colada, which is about
okay,
the
never mind. That's the
clone
trip.
and the trip with Kate.
Uh, yeah, the start of this episode is him buying the black hoodie.
Yes.
It's set up to give us our suspicions, and that will be juxtaposed.
I think that was I thought that was very funny. Him standing in a store with a bed sheet over his head,
You're
just
very
looking
lucky the
around.
cashier didn't fucking like,
Oh well,
especially with the gun
I
question.
have that written in my notes. I said, "Oh, he had to be shopping at Walmart." That's the only place I can think of that would have allowed it without raising
They're
suspicion.
they're in red, so it's Kmart
Oh, you're right. They are in red.
Or Target.
or
No way, that's
Target.
Target.
Yeah,
Nope.
well, actually, Target's a little more uphill, so yeah, I'm gonna go with
Oh,
Kmart.
Kmart, sure. But yeah, I thought it was funny. The kid's staring at him and he just winks. Mm. I thought it was a funny opening.
Yeah.
You know what? I've started with the popcorn effects at the beginning. Someone else take something from this episode to start with.
Let's see. I like that when Kate goes on the business trip with him, he's trying to kind of reinvigorate like her love. Oh, by the way, they're getting together. Such a wild twist. They I like that she's like he's like the clone is getting her to like do some things that he is like sticking her head out the window and just enjoying the littler things in life. Um,
Yeah, making
uh,
her see things the way he does, kind of.
yeah. They share the bed at the hotel. And actually, this is a note I really like. I actually like that they're struggling to get through all their layers of clothing to have sex. It makes it feel more real than like Hollywoodized romance.
Yeah,
Yeah, I suppose. It
I,
usually is quick whip off the shirt
Yeah,
or tear the shirt
which
off. It's
they
usually how
could
it
have
goes.
done, and I think
yeah,
they made the just tear it off, like the hesitance and everything and the uneasiness, because it's a bit uneasy and it's bumpy.
yeah. And I like the another note for relationships. I guess I actually like that they're communicating during it. So it's not really Hollywoodized. It's more. It feels a little more real, I suppose.
Yeah. I'll take. I like towards well. One thing I really like is when they're jogging and they stop on a bridge overlooking New York. I thought that was a beautiful scene. Like in
Uh,
the symmetry of the buildings, so they're right in the middle of like the road
yeah,
to lean down.
it's inaccurate. I don't see the Avengers Tower.
Yeah. Well, no, I think the Chrysler building though was on the right. Um,
I
could be
think
mistaken.
they filmed that location in Punisher season 1 with um the CIA lady, like the older lady, and the bad guy, the
Oh,
bald bad guy.
Crimson, you're absolutely right. I think that's the same exact place,
Yeah,
except that was at night. But yeah,
yeah. When I saw that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's it.
yeah. But still, I think that's a very gorgeous shot.
Agent Orange. That's what it was. That's bugging me. I couldn't think of his name.
Uh, on the other side, when Kate came to the clone's door and asked if he wanted the credenza, we don't see the credenza, but she doesn't necessarily. I don't think she says, "Do you want the credenza?" She says, "Do you want this?" Which makes me think the credenza is next to her. Did she carry the
Mhm.
credenza all the way from the car to his door?
That's what I got out of it.
Could she? Because every time she's carried the credenza, it's been with help from her friend she works with or from Miles. So that's
Well,
something I saw was like,
well, usually the credenza represents connection. So right now she's the one trying to connect with someone, so that's why she can suddenly carry it by herself.
Man, I
oh,
could not have
I
said it
see.
any
Okay.
better myself.
Excuse me, I'm gonna cough and die really quickly. Give me a second.
Oh boy.
Fair enough.
Crimson, I thought you would
Um,
say that Dan came and helped for some reason, but
no, I can believe she could pick that up. It's not a big piece of furniture. Even if she can carry it, she could drag it. That would kind of suck, but
okay. But
it's
Like,
possible.
opposed to
it would
leaving it
be.
in the trunk and just asking him to come and help her get it.
Oh,
I
I would
mean,
agree. It doesn't make much sense, but it's something that's feasible.
it's possible. I mean, like, there's nothing in it, so it weighs lighter. She could take the drawers out and then carry that, and then bring the drawers afterwards. So it's definitely possible she could do it on her own. It's just a little odd.
Okay. Ryder,
Uh,
do you have something to go? Oh, never mind. I heard enough from Crimson. Crimson, do you have something to go with?
What?
sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. So they were having a meeting, the business meeting, and he's all happy the whole time, smiling. Can't really hear anyone because he's in his own little world, and then just up and leaves, and everyone's like, did he just leave? He is past the point of caring about work. I guess is all right by this point. The clone's relationship with the work is a little odd because we see him at the work more often than uh,
Miles?
Miles. Yes, thank you. Uh, he always took his place while Miles was at home drinking and writing and all that stuff. The idea was originally his, so I don't know. This could be my own projection, I guess, onto him. But it seems a little odd that he would just leave, even if he's all happy about going on a trip with his wife.
I think
I
it's
do.
fine because he's his main focus at this point since I think episode 2 has been on Kate.
Um, I don't think I agree fully with that, Springs. I am still fine with it. I guess my take on it is more that he doesn't care about upholding Miles' image anymore. He wants to do his own thing. That's why he's going out with Kate. And so the work is no longer a priority for him in that sense. So I should point out because we didn't bring it up last episode. He gets a call that he hasn't or been showing up for work the last 5 days, and obviously that's the clone who's not showing up.
Yeah, that's right. That was in the last episode that Miles got
Yeah,
called and he was going to go check and then that's when he noticed the pig.
yeah.
Do you guys think Miles would have checked up on him at least once within 5 days?
He tried
I
to.
think yeah, I
We
think he
see
would have
him
tried and
ignoring
it would
him.
go to voicemail because he had the meeting and he tried calling him during the meeting and it went to his
Well,
voicemail.
I don't mean like calling. I mean actually
Going
seeing
in
him.
person? No.
Yeah.
Um,
After 5 days? No.
nah.
I think
I
maybe
mean,
in
this is
2
still a pretty
weeks.
new development, so I still feel like you'd still at least if I was in Miles' shoes, I would have checked within 5 days in person. I wouldn't have checked every day, obviously, but
I
I
think
would have checked at least once.
I think the comfort of back and forth that has been happening and knowing that it can happen, Miles has just accepted it until, he got the call about it.
I can believe a little more that he wouldn't go to check on him if I think he's still relishing in his own like partial accomplishments. Um,
Mm.
which helps, I think. I'm not against the idea. Like I said, there's not really enough either way here. Um, like so, I can with what we have, I can buy, but there's not enough as well for me to see it as a problem.
Okay.
Roger.
There's a line that's said from Dan later on in this episode that I liked, where he brings up it's a blessing and a curse. I think that's a nice um, title to be put onto Miles and the Clone. That alternate at times to times. Not one is specifically the curse and one's the blessing. It flops, and I just think that's another thing to add to the balance of the two.
I
I
agree.
would agree. I don't know what Dan would see as a curse in his situation because he
Well,
got
he
over it
say he
pretty
says
quick.
he says it non-committally in the with the whole like they have to jack off 7 times a day or whatever. That's the context in which he says the line, right, Springs?
Yes,
Yeah.
to his clone
So
buddy. No,
so he's referring more to that than I think than like
then
them.
Miles and the Clone. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's something in the moment to me that because the clone is thinking about you know his connection to Caden, Miles, and everything, um, which is the reason why he showed Dan the body, even though he's maybe a little intoxicated at the point. Um, but I think that's just a line used to help uh, title.
fair enough.
I can't tell if Dan is brave or dumb. Uh, I was in Dan's shoes, and
Oh yeah,
my
I would have thought he was
work
gonna be murdered.
nemesis drove me out into the woods and told me to get out and then start digging.
I mean, there could have been a point where like I think there needed to be a little bit more here where he did feel threatened or felt like he was in danger for his life. By the time he got there, I think he did, and that's why he just went along with it. He was afraid he was gonna die. But I think just agreeing with him initially was a problem. Like
I thought we were
if
gonna
they reached
fight.
the woods,
Get in the
yeah,
car.
yeah. If they reached like once they reached the woods, I would think intimidation's more than enough to keep him in line. But I think there needed to be something more in order for him to just go along with it, because he just goes along with it, and that's eye level that is very, very dumb. We're we've skipped a necessary part of the drama here in order for some logical consistency here. Um,
I do like that the first grave was an unknown person. It wasn't Tom
yes,
Brady or uh, uh, Dan.
yeah.
Just
I wrote
somebody.
down in my notes if the first one is Dan, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. So I was happy about that.
I do agree. I also like that, and the fact that it cut shots. You don't know how many he's dug up. The one
Yeah,
shown of Dan looking at himself is the third one, but for all we know, that could be the seventh one he's dug up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then they obviously show the Tom Brady one for continuation of the setup slash joke from earlier.
Yeah.
Hold on one second.
Look at my notes. How many times did we see the station wagon?
I remember from the first time in the when he first goes to visit his sister. It's in the background.
That's right. It is there.
Is
Okay.
that the FDA vehicle you're
Yeah.
talking about?
I guess it's the FDA vehicle. That's what I'm left to believe it is now.
That's what I think it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
it
pretty
has to
sure
be.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought it
Um,
was stupid that they ran the door off. Because
yeah.
either they're damaging their own car, or for some reason that is supplied through the FDA, they're damaging a company vehicle.
And
Whatever.
on the other hand, that could be brought up like during the interrogation or some scene in the last episode of the reason why
Yeah,
of
I would
like
have liked the acknowledgement of like, why did you fucking knock the door off my
yeah,
car?
if the
Like, is that you
serious
guys?
if
Yeah.
the dude of the FDA was like, "Oh yeah, sorry about hitting your door, clipped it," or the lady was like, "You were too close to our car and we panicked. We couldn't be seen," or something along those lines. But um, episode 7,
Uh,
I don't really have. I think that's kind of
we have
it.
we
Oh
have the setup with the dancing.
yes.
That's very important. She pretends not to remember.
Do you think that is before or after she's had this call with Miles? Because she brings up after, like when they're in the apartment room, that um or hotel room, sorry, the hotel room in the bathroom, that she got a call from him. Do you think that was before or after?
I think it's after.
Okay.
Uh,
So the dancing forgetfulness that she acts is not because of that phone call.
Oh, no, no, no.
I'm
Sorry.
inclined
I
to
thought.
think it was because of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, sorry. I misunderstood your question. I thought you were talking about the dancing being after the call.
I'm asking,
So
where do you think the
yeah,
call took place? Because we didn't see it.
it took place before.
Okay. Because I think that's what sparks her uncomfortableness with the clone.
Yeah.
Right. In her shoes, I'd feel pretty darn bad for Miles as well. Your true husband, and you just left him in the dust. Uh, she
Yeah.
gives her explanation, which I think is justifiable. I like their talk in the bathroom
I
about
actually I
how
love
she's
I l-
overwhelmed by his
yeah.
positivity.
I love their talk in the bathroom. It's very it's one of the most it feels like this dialogue is what inspired the show almost kind of thing. Because it's very very powerful in that positivity can be overwhelming sometimes. Uh Shocker trauma readers, I'm a writer, and or all our listeners, I'm a writer and I'm an introvert. So um, there's a I have a I have a limit to how much I can deal with being at parties and stuff like that because I'm just not a social bug. Um, I kind of view that a little bit in the same lens as Kate saw. Just he's too good to her to the point where it just feels unreal.
It seems the clone hasn't given any reason or want of downtime. Every activity, every thing he'd want to do with Kate is always a go, go, go kind of thing. Whether it's running or dancing or visiting somewhere, it's just continually going.
Yeah,
Whilst
like
Miles
for him, well, I mean, I guess the example for this is like he's in the honeymoon phase, and she's
way
had
past
her
it.
honeymoon phase. Yeah,
And I like
it's,
how they explored every facet of what she's thinking because they could have easily just been like, well, I'm overwhelmed by your positivity, but she's also feeling guilt for the real Miles. She's also feeling guilt herself, thinking she's not
yes,
good enough for the clone. Um, and so there's a lot of layers to her feelings here. And I'm glad they covered all of them.
yeah. Again, like it's one of those things where like this could have just been something very very simplified. I would have been more annoyed if they did that, and I'm really happy they took it the very very like as you say ogre direction, onion direction layers. And it's it's kind of like it's great to kind of see him snap at it, and then once he does, you realize what happened, and he comes down from it. He just immediately comes back to apologize because he's never done that before or felt that emotion before.
Yeah, is outrage.
Hmm.
I still find that weird, but we covered that. um, I
Did you?
guess.
Oh, right.
Well,
Well, that
the
to
difference,
him, he
yeah,
would have
the
been angry
difference
before.
Sorry,
here I'm
sorry. The
seeing.
continuation of your earlier argument. Sorry, I didn't immediately connect.
Yes, yeah. I don't think it would be a new emotion for the clone because Miles probably would have had that emotion at some point in his life.
I mean, I guess it would be a profound philosophical experience in your scenario, regardless. this is the first time I've experienced that in that way,
It
but I
it
don't.
literally is, yeah,
Yeah,
but
I know it literally is. Like I said, there's an avenue where they could have explored it. It's profound in the philosophical sense. They just don't obviously go that direction.
yeah. I guess the last thing I have for this episode is the ending, where he was pretty much ready to kill Miles, from what I gathered, and then someone did the job for him in his eyes, and
And he
he
just
took
takes
it in
over.
strides.
He
Yeah,
goes inside and starts practicing.
you know what? He does a good job impersonating himself. Paul Rudd did a good job trying to emulate his the way he talks, I guess.
'Cause it's
Like,
it, rem-
"Hun, honey, I'm home. Uh, I'm here." He tries
it,
all these
rem-
different versions.
it reminds me of oh fuck, it's not Halle Berry. It's you guys are Harry Potter fans. Who's the like Voldemort's witch lady friend that's like evil?
Bellatrix
Bellatrix?
Lestrange by
Bellatrix.
Helena
Bellatrix, thank
Baron
you.
Carter.
Yeah, thank you. Bellatrix Lestrange. It reminds you of the scene where she is acting as Hermione as her when they're going to the bank in one of the last movies.
Mhm.
Um, in that sense of like, you have to add a lot of layers onto the character as an actor. And then I think Paul Rudd does a good job of that here in the brief scene that we have of it, where he's just kind of awkwardly trying to find Miles in himself.
Playing the clone, playing Miles. Yeah, it's a, it's great acting. I said it
Yeah,
before. It's very very good acting from Paul Rudd.
yeah.
There's a reason he was nominated for it. He said he was nominated. Did he actually win anything?
I did not see any facts that they did win anything,
Okay.
but there was 2 nominations. Anything else for episode 7?
Nope.
I yelled that the door was fixed when he got out to go murder Miles, and then obviously this is the only scene where I saw that they both had the same car, and that's what I'm like. All right, I'm lost on logistics.
Okay, yeah, there's 2 cars. I
Well,
think
that was also a problem I had. Sorry, with the clone having a phone the first time, when he was handing when they were giving wallets and stuff and ID. I don't because we didn't see the clone get the phone. We saw him get the ID and
the credit
Well,
something
card.
else. Credit card.
he gets the benefit in that episode because at that point he's living Miles's life.
No,
The-
I mean,
which is
when he was
which is
supposed to leave, he had the phone on him, which
yeah,
then the wife calls about the
yeah.
dry
It's
cleaners.
it's weird that Miles has the wallet. Is what I'm saying. Like the weird thing
Oh,
is that the what I'm saying, the weird thing about that scene is that Miles has anything because he's the one that crawled out of the grave. So technically, the
Well,
clone should have all the possessions at
the
that point.
at I believe he does at that point. And before he goes, he says, "I need my wallet," and the clone hands him the
yeah.
wallet, and then the clone says, "I need ID," and then Miles opens up the wallet to give him the ID and credit card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense that he has the phone then.
Yeah, the clone has the stuff.
Yeah, it just seems like Mile would have the phone instead of the clone when essentially in the scene back in what episode 2 that he's pretty much kicking him out to go on a trip.
Well,
But
yeah,
the
I'm
only
trying to
reason
make.
the clone has the phone is so the wife calls him so
It
then
doesn't
he
make sense that he would
rethinks.
have it. It doesn't make sense that Miles would have it because I still think the clone would be in possession of it.
The
It
clone would have
makes
possession of everything.
the clone would have possession of everything. I think Miles would have asked for it though.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Remind
I figured that's what you were. So just clarifying.
remind me, was it during this or after the fact when Miles is at home and calls the phone and it's on the other side of the door?
That's after
That's after. Okay,
the clone has his
because
phone.
the clone has the phone. Okay.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I mean, I'm able to give the writers credit enough. Like, obviously, Miles went and bought a cheap flip phone, and I'm okay with that. Or he's using his old flip phone. Um,
I don't know. If I had a choice, I had a clone. I would want my phone that has all of my stuff on it
No,
and
no,
let the clone take the flip
I
phone.
I agree with you. Sorry, let me just say that up front. I'm just saying I give them credit that one of them went out and bought a flip phone without them necessarily having to show it. Um, yeah, I agree that Miles would have asked for his phone back.
Okay.
Right. And now that we're done with episode 2, on to episode 8.
Well, yeah. One
Yeah.
last thing I had for episode 7, which it's definitely in the comedic joke wise that they titled the episode Pina Colada and put it out there, is because it's like the song Pina Colada, or the Escape. Um, in the sense of writing a letter about your poor marriage and matching with your spouse, which they even bring up in the episode that it's like the song. But so I think it's feasible, works, a little corny, but
Yeah, nothing distracting about
you're right. If that's it, on to last episode, episode 8, called "Nice Knowing You."
it. We spend almost 10 minutes with the FDA here.
These 10 minutes are god awful.
Nothing. I didn't like anything about it.
Yeah.
The
The
one
I didn't
little
scar
like
tidbit, sorry, the
okay,
one tidbit I do actually like is that the FDA phone call from the beginning wasn't ignored. It's not just played off.
you're right. I
sure.
do like that it
There
was
you go.
recorded. There we go. We found our positive. Everything else about this is just dumb.
The way they treat him is terrible.
The way they treat
Or
him
at
is
least the
terrible. The
lady.
way
I'll
this,
say the lady. The guy
the,
is questioning like whether this is right or not, and she like barks at him to stay in line, kind of thing.
I mean, like I get it. The clone division, quote unquote, is very underfunded, but I this is like
They
pathetic
kidnapped him.
levels. Yeah.
They did an illegal act.
Yes,
Uh,
Uh,
because then they even state you were never under arrest.
yeah. So they should be fired.
I mean, like with their observations, shouldn't they be able to tell which is their clone? You think they would have figured that out with all the observations we
Just
sneak
snooping
them
around.
around?
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I brought up the station wagon. Was the station wagon ever around the clone, or every time it's around Miles?
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Okay.
I do think it's always around Miles, but it still would have been. Again, they're observing, so I still would have some expectation of them watching both.
Writer, since you are a writer, I have a question specifically tailored to you.
Oh
What
boy.
are the writer's purposes of even adding the FDA in this? This takes up 10 minutes of our valuable time. What does it contribute to the
I
story?
think it's just supposed to remove the government element. Like if I were to fucking hedge a guess, because it accomplishes virtually nothing. The only thing I learned in this is that the agents are stupid because they would have asked for the scar first as a fucking demonstration that he's not a fucking uh, real person or a clone. Uh, and their testing questions don't make much sense either. Uh, so like,
I
And
think
the
there's a
questions don't
little
make sense because the clone would know the answer
I think
too.
their questions were used as the comedic writing aspect, where it just did not hit because of the uselessness of it.
yeah. Like I said, if it's they're going, I think they're going for comedic effect here with the booby milk and the. I'm putting their words because they say that.
They
So
do.
um, and the questions and the whole scene is supposed to be clearly played for laughs. I mean, the only payoff to this joke here for me would be like, I don't know how long he was there. I assume at least a day. But for all I know, he could have just spent like half an hour in there, and they just fucking fast forwarded it, so the time moving by wasn't coherent for me.
I think it was a
Mhm.
couple of hours, maybe.
Yeah, and well, well, I would hope so, given what we have at the end. Um, but to answer your question, is I don't know why. I'm just hedging guesses, and that's bad. That's a sign of bad writing.
Well, Ryder, you brought up how they should have checked the scar when Miles explained the scar to the both of them. The guy agent said, "Oh, we can look up your records," which to me said they hadn't done that yet. They didn't have
Precisely.
any medical records on file or very much about Miles. So I don't think
What a
they would have
nothing
known the
investigation.
difference. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
didn't look into the person they're following.
I think
yeah.
all they were able to do was just go off the phone call blackmail that was made, which
I,
I think kind of little helps that when the spa, the two guys at the spa who clone said they were like afraid and you know, didn't call the bluff because it was real blackmail with the FDA. They're actually afraid of being shut down, you know, that the FDA actually do exist and it's not just like you're scared of nothing, but
mm,
what they are scared of, I mean, they haven't interacted with, so they don't know these two agents in the department, but they do exist. Especially since the clone gives the whole article number of cloning. So I think it helps in that regard of there is the government aspect of against cloning and everything shown. However, as we've said, the agents are really dumb. The cloning department is underfunded because it's never found out. Clones aren't a big deal. Otherwise, I think the FDA would have been in episode 3 or way earlier than the last episode. So I think
yeah,
it's slightly to use to tie a loose end. That could be a
yeah,
thought.
it's used to tie a loose end, and I honestly think it was just genuinely to remove the government as a threat, like from earlier, or the idea of their presence.
Yeah.
I thought that they introduced the story that didn't even really need to be there either.
Yeah, so do I. Um,
So
all right,
they wrote themselves into a corner with it a little bit.
Well, I think
yeah,
if the FDA weren't there, they wouldn't be able to blackmail for the funds that they needed to get back from the spa. If the spa didn't believe that they were a real threat.
yeah,
A good
I,
writer could think of something else.
yeah.
They
A
didn't
good
have
writer
to
can
do
think of
the
something
FDA
else.
route, but
True.
Yeah, and once you do that route, you have a responsibility to sort of pay off what you're intending to set up, and I don't think they did that.
I
Like
think
if
it
it was if the comedy landed, it might have been more worthwhile, but it didn't.
true. I think it did land, but it's extremely flat. Because even then, Miles, some lady just lets him out. He goes upstairs, walks around with handcuffs. No one bats an eye. And then the two of them are like, "Oh yeah, like we forgot. We're reassigned."
yeah, terrible.
I think it just makes their characters terrible. Yeah.
I agree. Um, I am gonna rapid fire real quick because I'm reaching my limit. Um, and then I'll dip out. Um,
Dip out indefinitely.
I, yeah,
Oh, we'll need your
uh,
rating.
He's dying here.
yeah. If you can't fucking tell.
Oh, I can
All
tell.
right. um, I like the use of the credenza as a slight break in the fight at the end. It's kind of you know it's their version of rebirth. Starting anew, and then we even have death there as well. In that the clone is actually killed temporarily. And that's all the symbolism stuff. I think the drama actually builds up to this very well. I liked how I'm sorry, Clone isn't quite comfortable, looking messy when he shoots himself. Then he's trying different routes and like testing different things. He's exploring. He wants to because nothing feels quite right. And then eventually it's all about goading Miles to do it for him because he's a coward too. They share that trait ultimately. Um, and I think the ending also with the baby arriving and it being ambiguous is also probably a good choice. It settles the drama enough that they are going to have to work together now. Um, because Miles isn't inherently an evil person, so his clone wouldn't inherently be a bad person either. So I think that pays off. Uh, trying to think. Oh, the proper dancing with the dance routine that the kind of twist to us, the audience, that she remembers the dance and could do it very well, and then being shown that the clone is watching. All right, that's all I have to say. I really liked that.
All right. So I
um,
guess your rating then.
all right. Subjectively, I think this is a 6.5, and I think objectively, it's probably the same. I think 6.5 felt kind of right down there for me. The show's got it's very unique. I like that it circumvents a lot of cliches, and I like the willing exploration it's willing to do with most of its characters. Um, I don't think it's without flaws. Um, like I said, there are things that could make it stronger, as we've kind of discussed with the whole Crimson's different stance. The fact that he has the interpretation is indicative that the writing wasn't clear enough on that aspect. Whereas I think there was ample opportunity for it to be clear. And I do also think that um, Paul Rudd's a phenomenal actor and everything like that. So 6.5 and 6.5 for me. If I ever get around to rewatching this again, the subject to change, but that's where I'm going to be confidently landing. Um, all right, gang. Got pretty far, but I gotta call it.
You got it, Ryder.
Yeah.
Thanks for, sticking it to the end where you could be. Thank you.
Yeah,
Rest well. Don't
I
strain
certainly
yourself.
will.
Don't die
Uh,
on us.
Yeah.
I will do my best. I'll. You guys have a good day, and talk to you later, audience. See ya.
Bye, Ryder. All
All right.
right. Well, I'll go with, I think the whole dance routine was very sweet. Not sweet as in cool, but sweet as in like kind, like
Adorable.
adorable, heartwarming. It was it it was a nice payoff to Miles and Kate rekindling their marriage and relationship and sparking the joy that they had.
Yes, I totally agree with that. It was well choreographed as well. It it didn't feel professional. It felt like a dance a couple would choreograph, but it was smooth.
Well, I
Like
like
they've
that
done
because
it a lot.
I think the clone stated that they choreographed it when they
Mhm.
were in the bar or whatever when she didn't remember it. It was a detail he brought up.
So it was pretty good. Um, when when Miles sticks his arms through her arms and during that part of the
Yeah.
dance, and later we see that the clone walks by. I did think it was interestingly framed originally, so I guess now I know why it was because any other frame would have shown the clone.
True. Yeah. Yeah, that works. I like how in this last episode they keep flipping perspectives. Like beforehand, it was like solely on Miles, solely on the clone, kind of like who's the focal point. And in this one, it just keeps flipping between Miles and the clone, like every other scene.
I guess was there a point, and if so, did you think a individual was going to die, either clone or Miles?
Yes, I thought, at least for my first going, I did think one of them would die, um, to then bring on taking over like the continuation of it, because it sounded like at the very beginning in the episode of or the very first episode it was supposed to be Miles dying and the clone continuing, but the faulty um, equipment is why he woke up and didn't actually die or didn't actually get, I don't know what chemical or the I don't know how they actually killed him. I don't think everyone in the bags are just, you know they're actually dead. um so I don't really know on that aspect of it, but I do think one of them would have died or could have died, which I think is good to show that Miles actually does kill the clone and then feels extreme guilt over it and brings him back.
Okay.
because I mean, God, I can't even imagine how hard it is for someone to kill themselves in
I'm
an
trying to think
aspect of a
if it would
clone.
be
That's what I
easier
mean.
than just killing
Sorry,
somebody.
that's what I meant. I think it would be. Ooh, I
I f
think it would be
At least if
harder.
it was me, I feel like it'd be easier if I had to kill my clone opposed to just killing somebody.
I think it would be harder because, well, also the way they did it. So they showed, which is very dark turn. They showed the clone attempting thoughts of doing suicide, where initially he couldn't go through with it, and he had to coax Miles into doing it for him. Miles never had the thought of suicide. So by killing, which is why I don't think he just fired the gun at the clone when he had the opportunity to, because it's essentially could be seen as a suicide act. He's killing himself. And I think the clone could have killed Miles with the thought process already in his mind about that, or seeing himself in the mirror like that. But I don't think Miles could have. So when Miles did kill him with the pillow, it wasn't brutal. It was more in a way of just shutting him up with what he was saying, make me over and over. So I think that helps um the character of Miles why he brought the clone back.
So, you think Miles chose not to shoot him because he viewed it as a suicide thing?
A potential of killing himself, yeah.
Okay, I saw it just as Miles that wouldn't kill anybody. Um, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would.
Do you think the clone would be the type who would? Then I mean, it was kind of showed with Dan,
No,
but
I think he'd be willing to kill himself. I think he would have eventually gone through with it.
so do you
Um,
so do you think the clone could have killed Miles?
um, no, but I will say he has better odds than if Miles
Okay.
would,
So what
in my book, anyways.
I guess just a thought out there. What do you think the clone was going to do to Miles with the duct tape and the shovel and all that? Do you think he was actually going to go kill him, and that's why he asked for the gun at the store?
Knowing the two of them, I think that would have been last resort. I think it would have been an opportunity to talk things out. Because, right, in the view of Clone, Miles has been very selfish. Even with the one time Miles says thanks to the clone for everything. Through the clone's eyes, he's been very selfish. He's not worthy of Kate. Uh, so I think he just wanted to swap places and have him just go on a trip instead. And the only way to get through to him is to threaten him. So I viewed it more as an interrogation to reconcile than to actually murder. But I do think the clone is more capable of it. Just how far rock bottom he is, because he's at the point of just killing himself. We never saw Miles at that point, like you said. So, if that clears up my headspace on that. Cool.
Yeah,
Um, let's see
I
what else.
like that they both bump into the credenza.
Yes, I agree with you and Ryder
I think that's
when
a
he brought
nice
that up.
little that's a little comedic
It's a good
thing added.
payoff
That yeah.
because throughout the show, Miles isn't the only one that's hit that thing. So did Clone, and the fact that they both managed to do it here was pretty good.
Also, the fact that it wasn't. Yes, their name Miles and Kate are etched into the wood on in the drawer, but Miles had nothing to do with the credenza. He didn't like it wasn't something they bought together or anything. It's something Kate stole. So to
Yeah,
Miles, it just showed up. He doesn't really have a connection to it.
I mean, even Kate said when she brought it to Clone that Miles doesn't care about it, and
Yeah.
that he might. So
So I think it was good for
yeah,
the
I
two of
agree.
them to just wail into it with an axe. Something I didn't quite like that I'll say that felt the most cheesy was when they were hugging on the floor. It's like I don't want to kill you, I don't want to kill you either, and they're just hugging each other. To me, that just felt very cheesy.
Um, yeah, Yeah, it could be
It didn't
kind of
feel very
too
strong.
quick of a happy ending.
Yeah.
They were just trying to kill each other. Now they're all happy pappy. I agree.
I do think, I mean, I mean, this was made in 2019, so the technology to do it was there, but the fight looked very good. It did look like
Um,
two. I couldn't spot. I mean, there are different times where, like, if you look at it, especially with camera work and everything, you're like, okay, that is a stunt performer or a body double. But just the quick pace, like back to back of fighting and everything, and pulling each other's hair and punching, it looked like clone fighting. It reminded me somewhat of Spiderwick with the two brothers. I think it's Simon and Jacob something. I can't remember the other kid's name, but when they were like tumbling around in the leaves.
um, I I think it was a well-intentioned fight. I kind of disagree that it was. I like the variety of combat. It was like a couple punches and stuff that would we got them throwing on the counter and on the bed and all that stuff. But the camera work to me wasn't very good. It was a lot of close-ups to hide um, the stunt doubles, and I I tend not to like close-ups in fight scenes because you don't really get to see the fight. Uh, this is mostly a factor when the fight first starts in the hallway, when he tosses the gun and just tries to tackle him.
Yeah,
Uh, that whole interaction was very close-up camera work, and I think that was not very good. And there were two very clear scenes that I can recall noticing the stunt double's face. It wasn't like the back of their head, but it was very clearly a stunt double. But,
okay.
so I like the variety of the fight. I don't think it's like a master class in clone fight or anything, but it was a decent fight.
Okay.
Um, we kind of glossed over, but the suicide part when you look in the mirror,
Yeah.
I did like it. I do feel like it went a little too long though. I'm curious if you felt the same way with that.
Um, no, no. I think it was fine because it was the general thought of I don't going through his mind. I don't belong, especially showing that Kate doesn't want me. Um, after the dance that he saw. So he's like, I'm gonna go, but I'm not gonna go as Miles. He's gonna go as himself because he's the clone. So, he changed up his look. And being the clone, I'm not gonna be messy or a slob. So he put the bag over it so it's a clean kill. So I think it was paced wonderfully. And I think it just
Okay.
kept adding more tension and thought showing on him and his perspective because he kept changing, so he kept procrastinating of doing it. He didn't just end it right there or on his way home crash the car or something. So it just kept adding procrastination to it that showed me that he wasn't 100% into it. He didn't fully want to do it.
I guess the only thing I have left to talk about is pretty much the ending. Did you have anything else before that?
Checking my notes. Do. Nope. No, so the ending when Kate arrives.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'm Prager's.
Yeah.
Um, I agree with Ryder with what he said. It was a decent ending for the three of them to survive and to not know who's the father.
I think
Uh,
it's a definitely a decent ending, especially for a season of a show that could continue. I think that's something good. It doesn't have to, of course, but I think it's a good ending on how it is. I think it could have been stronger. I think it could have been better with how paced the show has been of just like adding and adding and adding. And I think the FDA definitely was not the hit they wanted to start this episode off with, which is still what they went with. But I don't know if that just left a bitter taste in my mouth towards the ending here, but I think it could have definitely been better. Um and it didn't it wasn't abrupt ending like during the hug and ending. It wasn't um Like Miles said, "I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a baby." He was fine with it. He was happy. Kate accepted the clone into the hug, so they're all working out together. Like it showed that it wasn't exclusion. It wasn't what are we gonna do now situation. Stop it on a big question. It was of acceptance. That's why I say it's a good ending. But compared to the rest of the show, I don't think it was as good as it could have been.
Actually, I popped it up because I had an idea. Okay, so why is she there? I just scrubbed the episode. How does she know they're there, and why is she there?
Well, Miles called the clone, right? And what made the Miles leave the house? Can you remind me of that?
Uh,
What made him go to the clone? Because he calls him on the way there and is angry.
shoot, what was that? He gets mad. The pig gets
Kate says
there.
something at the end of the dance.
Oh, when sh- he thought they uh, uh, fondued on the trip.
Oh,
Like a
okay.
little
So
Marvel
she
reference.
sparked. Okay, she sparked the idea, and he went to go to. Okay, so
So
by
I
that
guess she just
means,
followed them.
well, I don't think followed. I think Kate knows where he's going. Kate knows where Miles is
Well, he
heading.
could have gone to the bar. That he didn't have to go there because we've established he's a kind of a
Well,
drunk guy. We even see Clone go to the bar. Um,
we do.
so
For all we know, Kate did go to the bar first. We don't know that. I don't think she followed because throughout the whole fight and everything, Kate wasn't initially there, and Miles was driving like a madman, probably speeding the whole way. So that gives a lot of time to Kate, unless Kate was simply processing everything at home and then decided to go to the clone.
I'm looking up how long the fight was. All right, let's see. So calls. All right, 23-2.
I'm saying it's a possibility that she could have gone to Fridays. I don't think she did because I don't know the time allotted from Fridays to the clone's house from her house. We don't really know any of that.
About 7 minutes. She got there 7 minutes after Miles,
Okay. The
which I
only thing
doubt
we
gives time for
the
driving.
only thing we know of is that on the dating app they're a mile apart or within a mile. So from Miles's house to the clone's place, it's within a
Yeah,
mile. So that helps really narrow the math of this television show that we're trying to do. But
the only factor is we don't know where Fridays is.
yeah.
But I doubt all that happens in 7 minutes. But
Well, that's just how long the fight is. You got to also how the
well,
clone.
it's when
So
he went through the door and when she came out the door is what I timed. Because there's not a time jump within this
well,
fight.
no, but I'm thinking it's not just that. It's the clone leaving during the dance, and the clone was on the way. Do you think Miles was already in his car on the way to the clone before the clone got home? Because I'm trying to pace both of them. So the clone left while they were still dancing, and Miles left when the dancing was done. So I don't think the clone was at home by the time Miles left. The clone then tried, like, change his outfit, put the bag over his head until he got the phone call. And the
Oh,
phone call was from Miles, who was still driving.
it doesn't really matter if Clone is home or not. It only matters about Miles, where when Miles gets there, because she has the same travel time as Miles. So
Well, true for Kate. I'm saying the stuff the clone has also done helps add to the time of the distance. Now, sure, Miles was probably speeding and going way faster than how the clone drove home, but the clone had went through all the suicide attempts or
I'm
changes.
confused what you're trying to link now.
I'm trying to link the timing of. There's three times here. There's the clone to the end of the fight when Kate arrives. There's Miles, I guess, from when the start of the dance to when Kate arrives, and then Kate at the end of the dance to arriving when the fight ends. So the clone walked out during I'm gonna guess halfway mark of the dance when he had his arms through her for that angle you brought up. He
Mhm.
left then, drove home, looked himself in the mirror with the change of shirt, put the bag over until he got the phone call from Miles and waited for Miles to arrive, had the fight. Miles finished the dance, was told by Kate, immediately left, probably was speeding, got on the phone call, got picked up from the clone, and at that time is when the clone has, picked up the phone after the bag on his head. So that matches up those two of the timeline for Miles to then get there and get to the clone. I guess the only thing we don't really know fully is how long did the clone wait till Miles got there, because it kind of just jumped to Miles booking it with an axe through the lawn. So then that fight and everything, and then Kate finishing the dance. How long did she wait at home before she left? How did she go to Fridays to check before going to the clone's house, or did she go immediately to the clone's house and just drove slowly? These are I'm saying the three timelines to the characters that occurred during that time.
That's true. All that. The I guess the point I'm saying is regarding Kate's timeline only matters when Miles leaves because that's when she realizes she needs to go there.
Yeah,
Doesn't really matter the clone's timeline in this scenario because it only matters the time it would have taken Kate and the time it would have taken Miles and the time Kate arrives and the time Miles arrives.
okay.
Because through that interaction, we can calculate the time it took between them that was separate. Through Miles, he got mad, stormed out to the garage, tried to leave, but hit the pig, had to get out of his car, take the pig off, get back in the car, drive, as you said, probably faster than the speed limit. So that's his timeline. Uh, and then he gets there, then he fights for 7 minutes, and then she gets there. Her timeline is end of dance, and then when she gets there, which would be
Gonna guess at
only
least 10
set.
minutes.
Well, we don't know her travel time. All we know is the time difference between their arrivals.
I'm
It's
gonna I'm
seven
gonna say
minutes.
7 minutes of the fight. I'm gonna say 8 minutes. I think it's crazy that it takes 1 minute to drive from Miles's house to the clones,
I agree. I mean,
but there is a time between
since
the
we don't
driving.
know how much time is there, it's technically irrelevant because all we know is the difference.
Well, you
Either
can judge the
Miles
time
was
off
so
the phone
fast he
call.
cut seven. Hmm?
You can judge more time from the phone call because Miles was driving the whole time he was on the phone with the clone, which sure is 15 seconds.
Yeah.
But
So I guess
also,
the only way to calculate. Continue.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Crimson. This is an absolutely ridiculous thing to be talking about for the
That's
show.
the fun
We
part of the
spiraled down
podcast.
this absolute insane. I'm sorry for the audience that's pulling their hair out right now. This
Nah.
this just got wild. What point are we trying to make here? That Kate got there at some time. She had 7 minutes to get there. Cool, fine. This is wild.
All right, Spriggs, if you're done,
I'm,
tell me
I'm
when you're
I
done.
don't mean to be done. I'm just saying that I just took a step back and thought no one we are probably the first two people ever to put this much math and thought, maybe I don't even know if the writers did it, into this scene from a show.
Oh, it's
It's
almost
kind of
guaranteed.
bonkers.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I don't know what point we were trying to I forget.
It's been so long, I've lost it.
Yeah. Could Kate have
But
got there within 7 minutes? Sure.
yeah. All right. See, talk about baby, and they're all okay with it, and I'm okay with that.
The end
Anything
hug.
else?
I don't think so. Not for me. Wild. I
Um,
think Ryder would have shut us up way sooner if he was still here.
I don't know. I feel like you would have dogpiled.
Yeah.
Um, I guess the last bit is I do agree that it is kind of the safe ending. It's not a very strong ending, but it's safe.
Yeah.
And that's my
I'm
last sentiment for
glad.
that.
I'll say for the ending, I'm glad it's not a cliffhanger. It's not like,
Yeah, I don't
oh
really know what
no.
it would.
Well, if it was like, who's the dad, and then it just like goes to like each of their faces, it's like worried, and then it just ends there.
Soap opera.
Yeah, so probably it's like, oh no, find out next season. Next season never came around. It ended safely, as you said. So, anywho, that has been living with you. We go on to the ratings.
All right. Am I
Uh,
going first or you?
you can go first as I put in writers.
Fair enough. All right. So I will go with objective first. So going into this, I had a pretty high objective score of an 8. Going through all of this and all my gripes I've had with it, mostly related to how the clone stuff works and why clone is different in the first place. I was pretty big. The FDA was a big waste of time and really highlights the worst part of the show writing wise. It's not great. We talked about how the sister technically didn't really contribute anything to the story because even you brought up with the spa, they brought up pretty much give up, and then we get the sister part on top of that to convince them further to move on.
Hmm.
So technically, the sister didn't even need to be in this either. The character motivations connecting to drama with the wife and the stress of work and stuff, as we mentioned, was pretty solid. I agreed with the art department stuff with makeup and clothing, making them different, visibly different. Was pretty solid. Let's see the actual launching point of it being the spa. Uh, I is okay. I kind of got Freaky Friday vibes. Uh, I wrote that
Oh,
in my
okay.
notes. Where the launching point of that was just a cookie,
Fortune cookie.
fortune cookie. Um, like I had similar vibes. Um, but overall, is pretty tight script. Not too many conveniences. There's a few that we mentioned, but overall, not many. Uh, that I think they handled timeline hopping pretty well. It wasn't confusing. It was pretty straightforward. Uh, I think they were a little too cheeky with the number of days before um,
Oh,
clone
18,000 or whatever.
to the point where you actually have to do research
Well, it could have been a
or
reference to
or
something,
math.
but I didn't catch it at all.
Yeah, so I think that might have been a little too much, um, but that's a baby little nitpick. But overall, I think they handled time hopping well and perspective hopping between characters. Um, I probably won't watch this again, but I would like to know percentage of screen time between Clone and Miles. So objectively, originally an 8 across everything. I think it's gone down to a 7. Uh, Subjectively, as I just mentioned, I probably won't watch this again. It kind of falls into the forgettable Netflix category for me, kind of like Sprinks, you and I saw Behind Her Eyes before.
Oh yeah.
That that falls under the forgettable Netflix category for me. Something I will never watch again.
And you think
Decent
this
at
goes
the
with that?
moment. Hmm?
And you think this
Yeah,
fits with that?
yeah. This I think this is a better quality product, but it's just something I'll probably never think about again unless I think about podcast. This is something I'll probably never talk to anyone again outside of podcast.
Unless
So
you bring up something in the future that has Paul Rudd and you can connect it to acting in this.
yeah, yeah, this won't be something I ever think of again specifically.
Okay.
There's no like theory crafting or like, hey pal, have you heard? Or hey pal,
Hey
using that word a
pal,
lot
yeah, you
lately.
say that all the time.
I don't know why I've been saying that. Like, I wouldn't go to my dad and be like, "You know what? You like Paul Rudd? This is a good Paul Rudd show." It's like I wouldn't even bother because it's not that much of a crazy Paul Rudd thing. But anyways, with all of that, I would watch it again if my dad, for instance, would say, "Have you heard this show?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "You want to watch with me?" I'm like, "Okay, fine." So with that, that's probably a 5.5 subjective. So just below 6.
5.5. All right. Well, oh boy, I closed my notebook by mistake, idiot.
Oh my gosh, you'll never find your page again.
Well, I know what I rated it. Okay. How to start? My score. So usually I let you know if my score changes at all throughout the podcast. I thought about changing it, and then I thought of other things, and I kept it as is. So my score did not change. I will start with my subjective. I think this is a wonderfully fun show. And I think when it comes to a binge worthy television show that feels concise, it doesn't feel dragged on, it finishes it all. It's about half hour each episode, so 4 hours for a whole season. I think it's wonderfully done. It's entertaining, it's fun, it's thought provoking. I haven't seen the show since it came out in 2019, so it's been about, well, it came out October, so about over 3 years now. I forgot how much I enjoyed the show. Um, the performances are great. The camera work I think is really cool. There's some really good, nice shots. Um, but subjectively, I enjoyed it. I give it an 8.5. I think it's a very
Oh wow,
fun show.
that's high.
It's high, but I put it there for a reason. I think it's very fun. It's sci-fi. I guess now I'll go into objective. Um, the comedy didn't hit. I don't think it was that funny. I think the drama and seriousness is definitely the more tone to it. I believe it's more focused on sci-fi of clone, even though it's not a big talk about it. They kind of do it in the first 2 episodes and then stop with the spa talk. I like that it continually gives stories. The job is a storyline that continually goes, that gets talked about. The spa is something that gets brought up. The Dan, the character, isn't just like a one-time use in the very beginning of the show. He continually keeps popping up. Um, even the FDA that's joked about in the blackmail earlier on, I think in episode 2, is brought in episode 8, so they weren't just nowhere and the government was non-existent. It's shown, even though they are dumb. Um, so I like the tie-ups to everything in that regard. I like even the throwaway little characters like Hilston with the whole discussion he had. That Crimson, you said it was one of your favorite characters. He delivered the pig, like that was his thing to Miles for the the pitch going through and working. So he wasn't also just one time used. Well, the actor was one time used in that scene, but I'm saying like it still continued the story and made it feel more whole, fleshed out, and feeling good. Something I think this show does that catches my eye to anything else really right now that's coming to mind is the pacing. I think this is a wonderfully fantastic done pacing. I don't think anything is used for bullshit and just doesn't matter. I think everything has a character connection in some regard to either Miles or Kate or the clone and what is shown. That's why I didn't feel the same of you and Ryder talking about the interaction of if it showed the clone's first interaction with the sister. I didn't think that was needed at all because it strengthened more of the clone's interaction the second viewing of the sister, which is with the clone, than Miles. I think everything that is shown is to benefit a character or to show a change in development, and I think that's really well paced. It's entertaining. Um, the shortness of the episodes, like they're not hour-long episodes, and some I think are as short as 21 minutes an episode. Maybe I think I said that in the facts. I didn't actually fact check the fact check, so sorry.
Hmm,
But it just feels
yeah.
quick and just keeps going, which just gives it that binge-worthy thing. And the ending, the beginning hooks keep you in to watch, and then the end, not cliffhangers, but like the stopping points are tense enough to like continue going. And I think that's just beautifully done in the show. I really like the lighting because it can be so difficult. I've had experience filming with trying to do clones of some aspect. So when it comes to lighting, you want to make sure the shadows line up and don't, cut off of where you edit the clip and crop. The lighting also didn't seem fake. It felt very natural, and the lighting of like the shadowing of inside the house at night or during the day, them in the car, it it didn't feel like set lighting, and I really like that part to it. And of course, that's digitally changed and lighting and everything in that regard, which can be used, especially how close the clones sit next to each other, or interacting with each other. Um, Something I do like that I've seen a couple times throughout. It showed at the diner. It showed when Kate was talking to them when they're sitting on the couch, of a character's back in the middle of a frame and Miles and the clone on two other sides, which to me is an easy crop editing choice. So that was something in editing I was able to pick up and see. Um, some of the cinematography work, as you said, close-ups. I know where the close-ups were used because of the body doubles and everything used, but it also shows the little justification of, for example, the dance scene, of why it was a close-up, for the reason to not show the clone, otherwise it would have kind of spoiled the rest continue forward. Um, I think the points in episode of the point of view of who it was on, from Miles to the clone, and then back and forth, where you think it might be repetitive until episode 5, where it tackles onto Kate, and then episode 8, where it just goes back and forth. I think that's wonderfully done. Kind of gives it that creative spice and flair to make it a little more captivating to an audience to continue watching. So it doesn't get boring in that regard of it. I think you brought up the clothing department that I didn't actually catch at all, other than the fact that I just know the clone dresses a little nicer than Miles. Miles is, disheveled a bit. I saw the makeup. Makeup is good. Not, you know, not out there great or anything, but it's good enough to be spotted. Geez, what have I not touched on? Writing. Writing's fine. It's okay. It's definitely cheesy in some points, and not as strong as it could be. Throwaway lines get justified later with backstories and whatnot, which I think is also really good to show the intention of what you think at one point, especially for, I guess, you and Ryder on your first viewpoint of what it could look like, versus later down the line in the episodes to see what the character could have been actually thinking in that time. So I think that's a good little play on both showing character in the show and the audience's thought on what is being shown. Uh, but I mean, the weakest episode to me is probably episode 8. I think the ending was a bit cheesy. I think it was safe, and the FDA is used in a way, but they're so bad. And I guess that's only to show that they didn't get in the way of a story they didn't know how to write throughout with the FDA, and how the clones could have gone around that, because that could have probably been a totally different show if someone got arrested or the clones, being taken away or whatever. It would have been completely different, and I don't think they wanted to focus on an action escape possibility and just stick to the drama of a marriage.
Mhm.
So I think I've tackled a lot of the aspects to the filmmaking of the show objectively, and I'm sure that might be a comment that says you didn't talk about this, and I go, oh well, I'll talk about that during the recap. But overall, objectively, I am going to give it an 8.
Okie doke. Well, we don't have a writer to sign off.
That's not where I want that. Hang on. Oops.
No.
Right there. There we go. Sorry, I'm still doing the OBS flip thing on YouTube side. Sorry, but all good. Okay. And Sinister did not watch this. He didn't have the agenda to do so. But when and if he ever does, I bring it up in a later down the line recap.
Yep.
But that has been Living with Yourself.
Can you live with yourself having watched this show?
I sure can. I've seen it twice.
Yeah. Especially with those ratings, certainly could.
Um,
Writer did 6.5 for both, right?
yes, 6.5 for both. So Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cheap Seat Critics podcast. If you're listening on, oh boy, this isn't my department, but if you're listening on Apple Music, Spotify, Castbox Media, Anchor, um, Samsung, if you're on the
YouTube.
YouTube, if you're on YouTube and watching along, thanks. Hopefully you enjoyed the watching aspect, or YouTube to put it on the background, that kind of thing. Gosh, I always feel like I'm forgetting something, and I'm so sorry to those who are listening on that device. I just, Ryder usually takes this, so I'm sorry. But yes, and we had a geeky writer,
I'm Crimson Maroon.
and I'm Sprinks, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Toodaloo.